A lively medieval town, whose streets are walked by many adventurers. The main character's name is Red Dixon. The black-haired young man is a member of a level C guild called the Black Wolves. He left the royal capital at 25 years old and moved to another city to become an adventurer. Now he is 30 and has been at rank F for 5 years. A merchant offered to sell the young man some fresh vegetables, but he needs to go. The young man is not a particularly strong fighter. He thoughtfully looks away. Suddenly, he notices something. A little girl fell to the ground and cried because her knees hurt. Two children approached, noticed she had fallen, said she always barely walks, and asked her to wait while they call for help and would return soon. The boy scratched his head, noticed the girl had fallen, approached her, sat down, and politely asked to look at her knees, and the girl, with tears in her eyes, was surprised that it was her uncle and agreed. The young man placed his hand on her knees and made a restorative movement. The girl smiled in surprise and happily said that it no longer hurt at all. The young man put a finger to his lips, smiled, winked, and asked the girl not to tell anyone a word. The happy girl agreed. The boy has unique skills and healing magic. The satisfied girl thanked her uncle and said goodbye to him, and he waved back as he walked away. Walking down the street past passers-by, the boy opens his waist bag because he wants to drink a little and takes a bottle out of it. The boy wonders why Jill suddenly invited him to a bar and did not invite Aisha, thinks she wants to talk about a future promotion in the guild to rank B, and continues walking down the street. After some time, the main character meets a young man named Jill, the leader of the Black Wolves Guild, who is sitting at the bar, smiling, and kindly asking Red to stop working for them. Jill's smile disappears. He asks again what is strange here and is embarrassed because of Red's surprise, saying he is trying to be polite and not rude, points to the young man in front of him, and says he is being fired. Rita gets up and asks Gil how this could have happened so suddenly, to which his interlocutor replies that it was not so sudden. Their guild, Black Wolves, could have risen from rank C to rank B. The young man asks again if he heard everything correctly and what it means, because he does not believe what is happening. The guild leader tells him to decide for himself. He cannot always carry ballast with him, especially when he drags him down. Red asks if he would at least be suitable for the role of assistant. Jill can no longer stand it and angrily hits the mug on the table, spilling the drink. He looks angrily at the boy and says that they have been working on themselves since youth, from the age of 20 like him, explaining that there is no rank for help, so he better quietly leave here. Also, everything he was given is taken back. Red was surprised, and Jill explained that when you move to another rank, former B-rank guilds give equipment to newcomers, and he will not accept their equipment for the trial. Red asks to wait and says that then, looking at Jill, he will not be able to do anything as a hero. Jill, with a wide smile, asks again, what hero? With disgust on his face, he explains that he will not become one and that he should return home to his farm and work there. Rita stands in shock from the news and hits the table with her hand. Then he raises his hand to his chest and exhales heavily. He said goodbye to Gil, and in response heard unpleasant words that the Red is worthless. When the boy leaves, his now former guild leader continues to drink and laugh, and says that without him they will definitely get B rank. Amid Gil's loud laughter and words of thanks for the visit with a wish to return from the bartender, the upset young man leaves. Red sadly walks down the city's night street. At the meeting, the girl recognizes him and calls out, while the boy looks at Linda in surprise. Their eyes met. Linda, his girlfriend, looks at him with astonishment and asks if he has left the adventure as a guild member. They stand in the middle of the street. Linda tells the young man that he is no longer an adventurer and can no longer earn money, and he agrees. Her expression changes. She begins to look down on him and says that she no longer needs him and that they are breaking up. The boy asks again in surprise how they can break up, and the girl shakes her head and insults him. She says that if he has no money, he is not worth her attention and dating him is a waste of time, tossing her hair back. The boy looks at her embarrassed, says that she did not think that way before, that he did everything for her, and asks if she was only with him for money. Linda confidently replies that it is natural that only rich men can be with such a beautiful woman as she is. Rida says he wanted to help because she owed money to her parents. She laughed and asked again if he really behaved that way, then added that she had not seen her parents for a long time. The stunned boy realized that the girl had lied to him and asked why she did it. Linda approached the boy, looked him straight in the eyes, and said that, of course, it was all for the money. After that, she turned around and waved goodbye to Rida because she had a date. Still shocked, the young man asked who she had a date with. She responded with her usual smile, explaining that she was with a man who had money because, unlike that guy, he was also an adventurer. Red tried to stop her, but she did not turn around and simply said that he should no longer talk to her. The boy stayed in place and kept calling her, but she walked away. He turned around and, upset, also left. A new day, the sun high in the sky, birds flying by Red's window, and he lies on the bed. Empty glass bottles lie nearby on the floor and clink against each other, the leftovers spilled on the floor. He opened his eyes and was not sure if it was already morning, sat on the edge of the bed, grabbed his head in pain, noticed the bottles of scotch, and remembered the events of the previous day. Before his eyes appear the faces of the former guild leader Gil and his ex-girlfriend Linda, who are laughing at him. He smiles and marvels that he can afford to laugh even in such a situation. The boy stood up and slapped his cheeks, took off his outerwear, and went to the shower to freshen up, ready to start looking for a new job. Near the headquarters of the Adventurers Guild in the royal capital, the hero dressed as a healer comes to look for a task within his power. The employee scared Red, approached from behind and said they were waiting for him, then smiled. The boy turns around and recognizes Sierra. She smiles and invites him to enter through the back door, then politely asks him to tell his story, and the boy agrees. Sierra, an employee of the Royal Capital Adventure Guild headquarters, sitting at the table, shook her head, not understanding why Jill made such a stupid mistake, and was shocked by these words. She believes that Jill is wrong and that their guild will accept Red, and also suggests promoting the Black Wolves Guild to rank B, and Red is surprised again. Sierra explains that this is because Red is a modest traveler who can use healing magic and has a bag of items. The boy waved off and explained that one healing magic was enough, and he only needed the bag for luggage. Irritated, Sierra sighed deeply and bowed her head. She understands the situation and says that she wanted to treat Rita well, and she feels sorry that others treated him so badly. But looking at him, she still says that both the restoration magic and the bag with things are rare. The worker says that if it weren't for the problematic Black Wolves Guild, the adventurer rank would be higher, but Redo brushes it off and says it's nonsense. Sierra lost her composure, jumped up, and explained to the boy that he does not value himself at all. The modest young man says that in any case, he came to the guild today to look for a new job. Sierra, stunned, apologizes for not being able to help, worries and shows everything they can offer, while the worker, placing the announcement on the table, points to the groups looking for a healer, spreading them out before the man. A man is reading a completed form, stating that Count Rodenwald from the city of Amorta is looking for immigrants. Surprised, he asks the employee about it, and she apologizes, explaining that it was an advertisement for recruiting new immigrants, and they mixed everything up again. Red, who thinks about the city of Amorta, which is near the royal capital, recalls that he left his city to start anew in the royal capital. And then, which very surprised Siru, he points with his finger at the announcement and says that he will go to Amorta. Night, a camp outside the city, the fire crackles. In front of it on a large stone sits a young man. Retta sips a hot drink and says that the night is still cold despite the approach of spring. He remembers how Sarah did everything to keep him, gave him a recommendation letter to the Amorta Guild because her friend works in the guild of this city, and arranged for Amorta to take the young man halfway. Rita carefully put his hand into the bag with things and decided that today he would cook a fatty piece of beef for dinner. He knew that thanks to the bag, the raw meat would not spoil on the road, smiled at the meat, then took out butter, milk, vegetables, salt, pepper, and bread and said that was all. He put the frying pan on the fire and began to fry the raw meat. Against the backdrop of the starry sky, the cry of an owl was heard. The boy asked in surprise who was there, saw a girl behind the stone, looked in her direction, and told her to come out. She silently pressed her hands to her chest, stepped barefoot on the stones, and peeked out. Her appearance surprised him, and she blushed. The girl under the moonlight looked into the void, with lifeless eyes, in dirty and torn clothes. Rita closed the bag and was surprised, not understanding why the girl was in rags. Then he asked if she had anyone else, mother or father, and she shook her head. The young man thought it was madness, a small child standing here in the wilderness, so he asked again if she was hungry and wanted to eat with uncle, but the girl was silent. Red smiled and began to call, "Come, come," asked if she was cold, said he was lonely and hoped she would have dinner with him. The girl looked at the boy fearfully, her stomach was growling, and under the beautiful starry sky she began to approach Red's camp. Wrapped in the cloak the boy gave her, the girl silently sat by the crackling fire and ate, while the boy cut meat in the frying pan and thought she was probably very hungry. After eating, the girl's stomach was still growling, which caught the boy's attention and their eyes met. Red smiled, handed her a piece of meat, and said she could take more because it was left just for her. She looked at him, holding a spoon with food. After some time, the bowls with food were empty and set aside. The girl hesitantly thanked for the food, and the young man warmly replied, "You're welcome." After dinner, Red introduced himself to the girl, saying uncertainly that he was kind of a traveler, and sat opposite her. The girl replied that she was Mina, looking into his eyes and sitting next to him. She held the gifted cloak in her hands, and her eyes filled with life. The boy asked if she had a home or somewhere to go. Mina shook her head. The boy thought for a moment, closed his eyes, propped his chin with his hand, then looked at the girl and said she could go with him. Throwing the deck into the fire, Rita said that from here he was going to the city of Amorta and would stop in a small town along the way. The girl hesitantly asked if it was true, to which he smiled in response. He looked at her legs with bruises and scratches, asked if they hurt, and immediately said he could heal them, but for that he would have to touch them. Mina noticed this and said he had no medicine. He sat down, took her legs, smiled, and said he could manage without them, then began to speak to heal the girl, and her legs were healed by a bright light. Mina looked at her legs in surprise and joy and said they no longer hurt. Then she looked at the boy and thanked him but forgot his name, which Red reminded her of with a smile. She smiled happily and repeated his words of thanks. Then he gave Mina tea with honey to warm her up, and they fell asleep together in a small tent under a blanket. The next day, the wheels of the wooden cart clattered. Mina was glad to have met such a kind man as Red, and he said he was even happier. The driver turned to the boy and reported that a village was visible ahead. They were located on a hill from which the entire village with wide streets and wooden houses could be seen, called Morelia. Arriving at the village tavern, Red and Mina thanked for the help and received good wishes in return, and in front of the tavern, they met an old man who smilingly asked what brought the father and daughter to this god for the city of Saken. The old man said his name was Morelia, and he was the mayor of this small town. The boy responded with his name and said they were here for a few days and he would not remain indebted to the old man, so he would shake his hand. The old man agreed. The mayor notices that the girl is dirty, especially when he sees dirt on her feet, and asks if she accidentally stepped into a puddle. Then he says that in any case they can wash up at the hotel and buy clothes and shoes at the store that can be reached by the road. The hotel belongs to his daughter and the store to his grandmother. The young man thanks her for her kindness. The old man winked and laughed, explaining that although the town is small, the people here are friendly and the food is tasty, and that they could always rest here. After some time, they were met by the mayor's daughter, who was cleaning, and welcomed them to the Sparrow Feather Hotel. Rita and Mina said they wanted to stay overnight, and the owner, noticing the girl, said they needed to wash up. The mayor's daughter opened the shoe locker and said that room 201 is on the second floor, and for 2 silver coins, they could get a room with food. Taking the boots, she approached the visitors and gave them to Red, explaining that he could not go for clothes barefoot, and added that after bathing, she would lend him shoes so that he and the daughter could go to the store. Red and shy Mina thanked the girl, after which Red returned to Mina, who had already climbed down from his shoulders, and asked if she would go wash up, and Mina agreed. Then Rita looked up, noticed Mina, and asked if she could take a bath by herself, after which Mina turned away and embarrassedly said that she was no longer a little girl. The girl went to the bathroom. She took off her clothes and carefully placed them in the basket in the closet. Then the girl opened the door and entered the bathroom. She was very happy and said that she had not bathed for a long time. Mina bathed. At first she rubbed her back with a brush, then poured cold water over herself. After washing, the girl sat in the water. She looked at her hand, thought, and said father and daughter, and this embarrassed her a little. Having come out of the bath, she told Riddy that she had washed while he sat at the table drinking hot tea. The girl apologized for becoming a burden to him. He replied that everything was fine and suggested going to buy her clothes and shoes. The tavern owner wishes them a safe journey and tells Mina to ask him to buy her the most beautiful clothes. Mina, again, embarrassed, stands at the threshold and asks, while Ridu waves his hand and says they are leaving. After some time they reach the store. Grandma greeted them. Red greeted and said he wanted to buy clothes and shoes. Grandma noticed the traveler, the father, and the daughter. The saleswoman is very surprised by the rags of this poor girl. She asks if the boy has spare clothes, and Renat awkwardly replies no, while Mina hides behind him. Grandmother quickly approached the clothes in the shop windows and asked to wait a minute while she looked for something suitable for herself. Picking up the items, she approaches them, shows them, and explains that the dress is made from a single piece of fabric, so it will help during travels and provide comfort, then offers to try it on. Mina took her things and ran to the fitting room, and grandmother, having waited for her, asked Radau what happened, and he, shaking his head, said he hoped to find someone in the city who knows this girl. The saleswoman says she has never seen this girl here, although it is a small town and all the residents know each other by face. The boy agrees, that is understandable. After changing clothes, Mina peeks out from behind the fitting room curtain and calls the guy, then comes out and shyly asks him to say how she looks. Red, whom grandmother pushed, says that Vina is beautiful and it suits her. Vina is happy, and the boy, seeing her, thought she was sweet and did not expect things to go so far. Grandmother with a smile asks Mina what she wants to try on next. The girl asks in surprise, and the saleswoman explains that she is a traveler, so one outfit is not enough for her. Rita smiled and patted the girl on the head, asking her grandmother to try to choose an outfit that Minnie would like. She found a new outfit and went to the fitting room, came out from there, approached Red, and hoping he would like it, asked him how he liked the outfit. Grandma said it suited her very well. After changing again, Mina began to twirl in front of Red and her grandmother and asked about the new outfit. The boy said it was simply wonderful, and then he and his grandmother smiled and suggested the next outfit, which shocked the girl. The happy grandmother said she would choose another set of clothes and asked him to thank her when he saw the new set in front of him. It was getting dark. Mina and Red were walking home after shopping. Red offered to help Mina carry her things, but she shook her head. Then she looked at the boy with embarrassment, holding a bag with things in her hands, and turned to Rita. He looked at her and asked what was wrong. Mina smiled brightly and sincerely thanked for the clothes, saying she would appreciate them. Happy Retta wished her good health and added that when they returned to the hotel, they would have dinner. They reached a large house with a sign hotel, sat at the table, and thanked for the food. The happy girl said the steak was wonderful. Red added that he had heard that demon pigs were a local dish, so he had never eaten such meat, and the innkeeper replied that it was their signature dish. Gathering the empty plates from their table onto a tray, she returned to the heroes and said that their demon pigs were the best in town. Putting the dishes behind the counter, the hotel owner said that lately they had problems, heard noise from the street, and went back to the exit. The hotel owner also heard, turned around, took off the headscarf and ran to the exit, saying she would go see what was happening there. Red also got up and went to the exit to find out what happened on the street, and looking outside, was surprised. He saw many wounded, among whom stood a grandmother and the mayor, who said he would bring medicine from the storeroom, and a girl who was asking the wounded to hold on. When Red leaves the hotel, he looks around and sees how many people are injured. Mina asks what happened to them. Meanwhile, the residents are helping the wounded. Painkillers are offered to the wounded villagers on carts, and red marks are placed because some of them are in quite serious condition. He immediately puts on gloves, approaches the wounded, and says that he is a healer. Having attracted their attention, he adds that he can use a small healing spell to help them. The mayor's daughter looks at the boy in surprise when he tells Mina to stay in the hotel, but Mina runs after him and says she will go with him. Redo approaches the innkeeper and says he will help the seriously wounded, and she points to a cart and says he is there. The boy approaches the cart, in which a man is lying in serious condition. A grandmother stands nearby and says they will not be able to help him because Redo's magic is restorative, and due to the torn abdomen, he will not be saved. He touches the man's stomach and nervously says that he will try anyway, using restoration. Mina approaches the grandmother and asks what happened to that man. She brought medicine, painkillers, and disinfectants, and the grandmother thinks about Mina. Then he explains that they were suddenly attacked by a pack of demonic wolves, who also attacked their demonic pigs. Mina gives medicine to her grandmother. The man who came to his senses says with difficulty that he wanted to get rid of the wolf demon, but it attacked him. He hopes they will help him. Rita was surprised that the man came to his senses and immediately asked him not to speak. Worried, Red began to think that he would not be able to heal the wound, so he had to learn advanced healing magic for such cases. He tried his best and said that since he couldn't do it the first time, he would repeat it until successful, using the restoration spell again and again, 3 times in a row. The man was surprised and said he no longer felt pain. Then he removed the bandage and looked at his stomach, saying the wounds had healed. Grandmother was very surprised and did not understand how he managed to heal such severe injuries. Tired, Rita stood before the grateful man. He returned to the saleswoman, explained that it was simple restoration magic, and immediately, while casting the spell Wind of Cleansing with his hands, asked who was next. One of the villagers called him and said that 4 were seriously wounded. Nearby stood the grandmother, who asked for help for her son. Mina crossed her arms and wished him good luck. He waved to her and went to the other wounded. After some time, he applied restoration again, holding the man's mangled hand, and said this was the last time. The man immediately jerked his hand, checked if nothing else hurt, bowed to Red, and thanked him sincerely several times. Tired, Red wiped sweat from his forehead until the town mayor called him. Turning around, he saw many villagers bowing to him with gratitude, and the mayor said he could not thank him enough for saving the lives of the young men of their village. Surprised, Red raised his hands and asked them to raise their heads because he was just doing what he had to do. The mayor approached the boy and said he was sorry because the city treasury had only 500 silver coins, but hoped it would be enough for Red, and Red, surprised by such an amount since it was simple first aid, replied that he would not take so much money. The mayor asked if the man was joking because even if it was first aid, there were many wounded, and he would personally name the price at 2,000 silver coins for such work. Red was even more surprised, and the saleswoman grandmother said that maybe he was a priest or healer and asked if he knew how much they charged for treatment. Red raised his hand to his head and explained that he usually treated minor injuries and never paid attention to the price. Mina hugged him with a smile. The innkeeper said that few people know how to use restoration magic, so it is rare, and that magical healing costs several times more than healing with potions. The mayor shook his head and said that it was not even worth talking about healing a dying person. If Reda became their priest and healer, how much would it cost? Grandmother said that even if he knew how to use basic restoration magic, adventurers would immediately want to take him into their guild, which would surprise Red. The boy now understood what Sira was talking about and suggested simply paying for tonight's lodging, but the villagers shook their heads and said that would not stop them from thanking him. Mina tugged Red by the sleeve, and when their eyes met, she said that they would return and pay for the night. The mayor looked at them and understood. After that, he said that when both of them come to Morelia, food and accommodation would be free for them. Joyful Minas smiled and praised Red, which caught him by surprise. The man said that it was a very great reward for him, and also asked if they could go on a hunt tomorrow and kill those demonic wolves. The mayor, after thinking, said that it was worth going because they could destroy all the livestock and demonic pigs, and then attack the town, which he would not allow. Reda said that he would go with them, which surprised the mayor, who asked if the boy was sure about it, and he explained that he and Mina were going to the store and did not want her to attack them on the way, stroking the girl's hair. Reda also said that he did not think this adventure would hinder him, and although he rarely used magic, he had still learned some offensive magic. The mayor smiled and said that if someone used restoration magic, that would be enough for everyone to feel safe. Rita and the mayor shook hands and said they were very glad to meet. After some time, he returned to the hotel room, stretched, and said he was very tired, and Mina, noticing how good he felt after the bath, thanked Red in response. Lying under the blanket, the girl called Red. The boy looked at her and asked what happened. She pulled the blanket up to her face and said that he was cool today. Red blushed and turned red, put his hand behind his head and thanked Mina. Then he approached the glowing sphere, placed his hand on it, and told the girl that it was time to go to sleep. Turning off the sphere, the boy wished good night, and the girl wished them sweet dreams, and they went to sleep. The next morning, young boys with weapons gathered on the street and discussed something, listening to the birds singing. The assembled Red came out and greeted everyone. He was asked to give the order. He decisively said that these demonic wolves must be destroyed. Everyone agreed. Near the city, the squad was attacked by demonic wolves. The warriors surrounded the wagons and defended them. The sorceress, with a large wound on her leg, apologized that her right leg was completely paralyzed. The boy turned and noticed Fifa's wound. Cursing, the warrior with the sword asks what the demonic wolves are doing near such a city, and then loudly says that they must protect the mercenary and his carriage. Faith bandaged the leg to stop the bleeding. The archer on the cart says that the hide is so thick that the arrows do not pass through it at all, and the swordsman believes that if this continues, it will end badly. He turns to the wounded girl and asks if she can use her magic now. Breathing heavily, Fifa answers that she still can, and holding a staff and a spellbook, addresses the spirit of fire. He waved the staff and released a fire bolt, calling the spirit of fire to burn the enemies to ashes. Several hits struck the demonic wolf. One of them hit right in the eye, but it did not die. Fafen notices that this is bad because one shot is not enough to kill him, and again turns to the spirit of fire. The wolf, angry at the girl, rushed past the warrior and attacked her, surprising the swordsman with its behavior. FIFA, not managing to finish the spell, retreats from the wolf in fear. At that moment, Red collided with the wolf with her shoulder and interrupted its attack on the sorceress. The wolf falls to the ground near them, and the swordsman, shouting, "Well done," swings his sword. He stabs it into the immobilized demonic wolf, thereby killing it. Red, pressing her shoulder, turns to the joyful shouts of the other warriors who encourage him and Captain Riggs, who stabbed the sword. Captain Riggs suggests to the inspired guys to deal with the rest of the demonic wolves, and they agree. Red approached the wounded warrior and, raising his hand, began to heal him, explaining that even if he recovers, the lost blood and physical strength will not return, so it is not worth overexerting. After that, the man approaches Faye and politely asks permission to examine her badly injured leg. The hero touches the wound, and the girl feels severe pain. Then he applies a restoration spell to ease her pain, and she notices with surprise that the pain gradually subsides. After that, Reddit addresses the captain and others and asks if they are adventurers. They agree and say they are escorting merchants from the royal capital. The client, Mr. Eric, steps out of the carriage, surprised by the equipment. By then, Rita had already finished treating Faith's leg and removed her hands, after which the girl, surprised that the leg had already healed, began to move it. Captain Riggs raises his injured arm and asks permission to help them too. Retta agrees, uses a restoration spell, and says they came to get rid of the wolves. Mr. Eric, looking out from the carriage, thanks the main hero and begins a conversation about paying for the treatment, but Retta waves his hand with a smile and says it's all right, no need to pay, he treated for free, and Riggs, waving his sword, also thanks. The captain immediately began giving orders, commanded Faitha to attack the wolves to the left of the carriage, and the warriors from the town to get rid of the wolf on the right, and with a battle cry, they moved towards the pair of wolves. With a battle cry, they surround the wolves one by one and attack, using swords, bows, and halberds. A warrior resting next to Retta says that if this continues, he is sure they will be able to destroy their entire pack if the hero treats the wounded warriors. Worried, he returns to the forest and asks everyone to wait. Then others notice a large black shadow among the trees, and he says something is approaching. A huge demonic wolf with a scar on its face appears before the warriors from the town and slowly approaches them. The surprised and shocked guys look at him, ask what it is, and marvel at his huge size, considering him the leader of the pack. With a single wag of his tail, he tosses a warrior into the air, breaks his spear, and throws others aside. The pack leader heads to the cart, looks furious, and sees other demonic wolves dead on the ground. A warrior tells Red to just look at him, and Red agrees that this demonic wolf is definitely the pack leader. The leader of the demonic wolf pack opens his jaws wide and howls into the air, scaring all the warriors around, but Captain Riggs and Fifa begin drawing their weapons. The girl screams that he is coming at them. All the warriors stand ready and wait for his actions, and one of the warriors stands in front of Rita and says that although he is not very reliable, he will protect the main hero. Rita takes out the book of spells and says that nothing can be done, and he also needs to act. He concentrates and calls the spirit of fire, ordering it to burn the enemy to ashes. The warrior looks back over his shoulder, shocked. Rita extends her hand forward and utters the spell of fire arrows, which attack the leader of the wolf pack. Seeing the result, the main hero says that he stopped the wolf, and immediately continues to use the spell of fire spears, piercing and burning the enemies to ashes. The fire spears passed through the wolf's entire body and lifted him into the air. The dead pack leader falls lifelessly to the ground, and the spears disappear before the armed warriors. Fifa asks in surprise what that was, and the shocked Captain Riggs asks if it is real ancient fire magic, because it is so powerful. The warrior who started protecting Red lowered his sword and said that his magic is incredible. He had never seen anything like it before, and Red does not consider it anything special, and adds that although he has rank F, he is still a mage adventurer. Captain Riggs shouts not to relax, because although the leader is dead, the demonic wolves are still nearby. Fava asks what about the rest of the pack. Rada says she will also go with them to fight the rest of the pack and asks to watch over the carriage. In the village of Morelia, Mina, disguised as a cleaner with a mop, sits at a table in the hotel and thinks that Red has not returned yet. The grandmother sitting with her at the table drinking tea tells the girl not to worry because her father will soon return alive and well, and at that moment the innkeeper calls the grandmother, who turns out to be her mother, and Mina, informing them that the younger ones from Red have returned. Mina excitedly leaves the hotel, near which the city mayor is sitting, sees the children happy because of the victory and the merchants' carts but looks only at Red Up. When she sees that Red is safe, the happy girl smiles contentedly and feels relieved. Red also notices the girl in the crowd of townspeople. Nina ran to Red, he spread his arms and she jumped into his embrace. She was glad of his return. Evening came, people lit a big fire and held a banquet in honor of the victory over the pack of wolves. Retta, sitting with a mug, says that after work it is pleasant to savor ale and notices that Mina is also having fun because she is dancing with the innkeeper with a joyful smile. The mayor of the city approaches Red and asks if he likes the celebration and if he is having a good time. The young man replies that this banquet is wonderful. The old man sits next to him and says he would like to talk to Retta about tomorrow's trip to Amorta. A man from the rescued cart, Mr. Eric, approaches them, greets Mayor Morelia and Red, and the mayor replies that the merchant is just in time. The man says that he did not introduce himself properly and adds that he is Eric Roth from the Roth Company. Reddish shakes his hand, says that his name is Reddickson and that he is glad to meet him, and Mr. Eric thanks him for the help and for today's attack. He says that thanks to him, all their companions are alive and unharmed, and even the potions were not damaged. Now they can calmly continue the journey to Avert. Wright says that this is very good. They look at Mina, who is dancing, and the merchant asks if the hero will take his daughter with him to Amorta. He also says that he can give them a ride in his carriage to the city. Rada replies that it would be wonderful, and Mina calls him. He looks at the girl who is holding her grandmother's hand, and Mina invites him to dance with them. Behind them, the rest of the villagers are dancing. The innkeeper was pushing Red in the back and pulling Mina by the hand, asking them to wait because he does not know how to dance, and the girl tells him just to dance as he can and urges him on. Mayor Morelia and Mr. Eric, Lev wave goodbye to the boy until tomorrow. Rada and Mina hold hands and start dancing to the music among the other dancing townspeople. The men play musical instruments for them, on drums, lute, and horn, creating music and encouraging everyone to dance. The main character spoke each step aloud, counting 1, 2, 3, and Mina laughed. He realized he danced like a bear but continued, looking at the happy girl in front of him. The slightly drunk young man remembers his former Linda, and his mood worsens. The host asks the hero what happened and why he is so gloomy, and Reda, embarrassed, asks not to call him a hero. Mina saw this scene and laughed. The hero looked at her, asked why she was laughing, and realized he needed to think. The girl explains to the boy that it is because his face turned red. Looking at the girl, he began to think whether he should take Mina with him, because here, in Morelia, no one knows her, and his path ends in Mieti. Rida understands that this does not mean the girl will find her acquaintances in Amorta, but in Morelia she has more and more friends. He looks at the girl, calls her, and taking her by the hand, says that tomorrow they are going to Amorta. Mina smiles happily and says that everything is fine and she is looking forward to it. The young man smiles relaxedly and dismisses his doubts. He stands before her and says that from tomorrow it will be difficult, so he suggests going to sleep after this song, and the girl agrees. The next morning, when the main character was already about to leave, he shook hands with Mr. Eric and thanked him, and he replied that in difficult times people must help each other. The innkeeper and her mother approached Mina with a basket and said that it was cookies they had made together, and they were just right for a snack on the road. The girl thanked them. The residents of the city and the mayor said goodbye to Rada, asked him to definitely come again, and said that he is always welcome here. Mr. Eric had already sat in the carriage, called the hero, and asked him to also quickly sit down, because there is no point in delaying the farewell, and all the villagers saw them off. When they set off on the road, everyone called for them to definitely return, because they are always happy to see them. The children of the residents said they were waiting for them, and Reda and Mina waved goodbye to them. Leaving the city, Captain Riggs, who was sitting in the carriage with them, sighed and said that their group was still too early to fight demonic wolves, and Feifa nodded in agreement nearby. He lowered his head and said that although Rita used such strong restoration magic, he is still F rank, and Feifa noted that offensive magic is also impressive. Riggs hesitates because he and Feifa are also rank F, and he doubts whether they will ever be able to rise to E. Redia says that they are still young, so he is confident that they will manage, and if they try hard, rank C and B will be achievable. The swordsman smiles and says it would be good if that were really the case. At that moment, the archer calls him and says that it seems the situation is worsening and he will need the leader's help. Captain Riggs confidently tells Fado that it's time to get to work, and the girl mage agrees. They get out of the cart. Mr. Eric says that if things continue like this, they will arrive in Amorta by evening. Red is surprised and asks if it is really that fast, because he heard the journey takes 2 days. The man explains to him that if you take the old road, you used to have to make detours, but now everything is gradually developing. New bridges and roads are being built, so getting there has become much easier. Reda notes with surprise that the development of Amorta is impressive, and Mina listens to the conversation with interest and looks at Reda. They continue the road to the mountain in pleasant company. Mina eats delicious cookies from the basket given to her by the innkeeper. After some time, Reddit returns to the taxi driver, notices a large wall, and says that he sees the city. Mr. Eric asks if this is Mert. They say that many people are working on building the outer wall. The city is just developing, so there are still few houses and many places where there is only land and road. Mr. Eric adds that the city is very beautiful and lively, and Rita thoughtfully says that in that case, there is a lot of work here even for someone who does not like adventures. The man says that they have almost arrived, and if he or Mina have difficulties, they can confidently turn to the rack company. He will definitely repay the debt for the service. Rida asks about the service and the surprise. Mr. Eric, tapping on the boxes of goods, explains that it is about the destruction of demonic wolves, because thanks to this, they can now trade further and fear nothing. Read the thanks for allowing him to ride in Mr. Eric's carriage, and you can also turn to her if difficulties arise. The boy noticed that Mina had fallen silent and, looking at her, saw that the girl had fallen asleep, and the man, leaning on the young man, smiled and said that their conversation was probably too boring for the young lady. Getting out of the cart, Rada thanks them for their help, and the man says that they are heading to the merchant gates. Captain Riggs and FIFA say goodbye to the heroes and say that if fate brings them together again, it is worth setting out on a joint mission. Rita and Mina looked at each other, and the boy invited them to enter the market, after which they took each other's hands and passed through the gates. In front of Red and Mina is a wide street with 2-story and 3-story houses, along which people walk and carts go. The hero looks at the map and holds the girl by the hand. Later, the main hero reaches the branch of the Adventurers Guild on Amur, and the heroes are greeted by Millet, a guild employee, who welcomes them and asks how she can help. Red smiled at the girl in front of him and said that he would like to move here and register in this guild. The guild employee clarified once again if they want to move, and if so, politely invited them to the far table. Sitting at a distant table, Red and Mina receive a form to fill out, and the guild will contact them later. The hero takes a pen and writes Red Dixon's name in the field, noting that the girl must also write hers. The boy fills in the field for the girl sitting next to him, while Mina Dixon reads, observing his actions. Radu apologizes for not wanting to interfere, and looking at the girl, hopes that she does not mind. Mina lowers her head, shakes it in denial, then smiles and indicates that everything is fine and she is grateful. We move on to the next field, where we need to specify the purpose of the move. The hero thinks and hopes that this means relatives will be here, so you can write the reason and then clarify it in the guild. He reached into the bag on his belt and took out a letter, explaining that it was a recommendation letter from the Guild of the Royal Staff. The worker took the letter and asked him to show it. Very surprised, Millet says that this is not a letter of recommendation, and this greatly shocks Rada. Then she explains that this is not just a recommendation letter, but a recommendation from Sarah. Mina is worried and asks if something is wrong, but the employee says it is better than an ordinary recommendation letter. He asks if it is true that the letter says Mr. Dixon knows healing magic and works in the Healers Guild. Reading the letter confirms this, but it says he can only use restorative magic. The employee jumps up and says that the very possibility of using healing magic, even if it is only restoration, is priceless, and asks to submit the application as soon as possible. Reda asks about the application. The hero politely refuses and asks to wait because he doesn't even know where he and Mina will stay today, but Millet says that the guild has an inn they cooperate with, and the heroes can spend the night there. The employee adds that the hotel, of course, will be paid for by the guild, and they will also provide them with free access to the guild's grimoires, for which Reddit is grateful. Calm down, Mill looks the hero in the eyes and asks if he will finally accept their application. Reddit puts his hand behind his head and says that this is just healing magic that replaces potions, but the worker replies that it is not a problem, bows, and thanks him. She hands over a sealed letter and says that it is for the inn, and Red accepts it gratefully. Later in the evening, the main characters arrive at the hotel, where they are greeted by Riggs Dahlan, the hotel owner nicknamed the Bearded Dwarf, and nearby stands a girl who introduced herself as Milan. Red shakes Riggs's hand, and in response introduces himself and Mina, explaining that the girl is a bit shy and hopes that Milan will become friends with Mina. The girls smiled happily and shook hands. Milling asked if she lives in this town and if Mina would be her friend. Mina shyly agreed. The owner says that his daughter likes Red's daughter, and they seem to be having a good time, and Red awkwardly admits that Mina is not his daughter, which surprises Riggs. Riggs Dahlan says that when a person is an adventurer, anything can happen, and he will not go into details, because if she is under Rita's protection, then so be it. Then he says that the room is shared and advises to take the free one. Red says that he has no more questions and thanks for the hospitality, and the Bearded Dwarf's host replies that he is glad to help, and since they will live under one roof, they should treat each other like family. Riggs asked his daughter to show the guests their room and not to forget about the bathroom and toilet. Maylene happily says that she understands everything, and the father adds that later they will all eat together, so she should join too. The innkeeper's daughter takes Mina by the hand and pulls her along, inviting her to go, while Red and Riggs remain talking to each other. After some time, Milan, holding a tray with food on her head, runs up to the table with a smile, apologizes for the wait, and says that pilaf, salad, and soup with a large amount of meat are ready. She places the plates on the table and sits next to Mina, and opposite them sits Red and waits for the others. When everything is brought, they wish each other bon appetit and begin to eat with a smile. Mina starts with hot soup. Tasting a spoonful, she happily says that the food is very tasty. Milang supports her and says that her father's dishes are always very delicious. Mina loves this very much and calls it magic. Reda, tasting the pilaf, says that it is perfectly fried, crispy, aromatic, and tasty, but in his opinion, a bit oversalted on the grill. Other guests in the tavern are also satisfied and praise Mr. Riggs, saying that they always perceive gnomes as blacksmiths, and Redis says that both food and sword can do everything. Malin tells the guests that her father used to make swords, but after the birth of his daughter, he became a cook. Rita says that Malin has a cool dad, and with a radiant smile adds that it is really so. The heroes return to their room. The young man says that the owner's daughter is a very cheerful child. Mina agrees and says that they have become a little friendly. The young man adds that this is good because they will have to stay here for a while. Then they hear a light knock on the door and turn to ask who is there. Suddenly Milan enters and with a smile invites Mina to go to the bathroom. Mina and Milan enter a special room together, and Mina helps her new friend wash her hair. Then she gathers her hair into a bun and asks if this is the innkeeper's wife, and Milan says that despite this, she has a lot of fun doing various things with her father every day. Looking at the heroine, he says that sometimes strange things happen, or rather, sometimes they have problems with guests. Then she suddenly jumps out and says that her father then does this, standing in a heroic pose with a smile. Then crossing her arms over her chest, she tells him that her friend's father is just as kind. Mina smiles and adds that Retta is truly a very good and kind person. The girls hold hands and, kneeling down, happily say that they hope their parents will understand each other so well that they can swim and wash clothes together. At this moment, Reedy feels uncomfortable hearing the girls, and she quietly says that Melon is overdoing it a bit. The next day, not far from the city, people are cutting down the forest. There is also Red, who takes the wounded hand and heals it with his restoration magic. The text of the traveler Amore reacts with surprise to this healing and says that he is impressed that Red healed 3 people with severe injuries. He said he was curious about Red, and it turned out that Red is good because he has to complete a task with the girl. The boy apologized and explained that he arrived in Amorta only yesterday, so he cannot leave her alone. He touches the girl's hair and, smiling, says that she has a good father and calls her a young lady, and Mina thanks him and calls the traveler uncle. The man looks sadly and asks the young lady not to be angry, at least to call him older brother, since he is only 40. The soldiers nearby say he can be called uncle, although he rather looks like a grandfather. Tex puts his hand on the main character's shoulder and asks Mina if he is also an uncle to her. The girl, not expecting such a question, thought for a moment. She smiled and said that it was not so. Rida is Rida, he is not an uncle. Rida laughs and thanks the girl. After some time the men look at the main character. He does not understand and asks what they want. The traveler says he leaves the rest of the work to him, touching him on the back, and he, understanding, gets to the text. Then he eagerly asks to wait and inquires what exactly he wants him to do. The man smiles and tells him simply to try to do something using magic. Rita looked at the adventurers, clarified whether they wanted him to cut down trees in the forest and how exactly they envisioned it, after which he thought and said it was worth trying, then added that if he had ideas, he could try. The main character agreed and warned them not to approach him, then addressed the spirit of the wind. Focusing, he ordered the invisible blades to dance and scatter down in all directions and shouted the wind blades spell. Red spoke the spell and the trees fell to the ground with a loud crash. They were cut at the base. Everyone was stunned. Red said it turned out unexpectedly powerful for him, and Mina, who stood behind with others, said he was cool. Tix, excited and shocked, shouted that of course he asked for help, but did not expect things to go this far. Other men also spoke, surprised by what happened, not believing it was beginner-level wind blade magic, said that the red wind blades were clearly higher level, and in this case they would lose their jobs, so it was better to become lumberjacks. Red awkwardly raised his hand behind his head and said that lately he had been lucky, and Text asked, since magic depends on the amount of magical power, how much the hero had. Tex nodded and said enough talking because they needed to work, but he did not know where to put all the cut wood, so he suggested loading it into a cart and added that since there were about 30 of them, the logging would take less time. Rita extended his hand forward and used the binding chain spell on all the piles of chopped wood on the ground and tied them. After that, he addressed the others and said that he actually had a special box for things. The main character used storage magic, and all the bundles of firewood rushed into his belt pouch, emptying the forest and leaving only stumps. Everyone around was shocked again, and in the text about the adventurer, it was written that the young man was a jack of all trades. Mina, standing with everyone, thought about what a good person Red was, watching how he cheerfully communicated with others. She smiled and recalled that when she first met him, he seemed scary to her, so she was cautious. Very soon she realized that was not the case. She only said her name, but he still treated her well. Rita always cared for her and was kind. He also was unlike any healer she knew, and the men in front of her shouted that they would leave earlier than planned, that now they would pack their things, harness the horses, and go home. Healer Minamit spoke only about money, while Reddit cared about those he healed. The man says he will help others and asks Minam to wait. Mina smiled at Red, waved to him, and said to come back soon, thinking how lucky she was to meet such a man. The girl knew that he was asking Lady Millet from the guild and Mr. Riggs from the tavern about her family. She silently looked at the moon and thought about her relatives and what would happen if Fred found out the truth about her. She imagines his gloomy face, thinks that he will no longer smile at her, will think she is bad and leave her, while inside she screams that she does not want that. Ridu smiles, waves to her, and calls her home when everyone else has already gathered and harnessed the horses to the carts. She smiles, agrees, and says she is coming, realizing that she wants to stay with him. After some time, they reach the noisy city of Amorta, where a mysterious figure in a cloak with a hood watches them from above. Under the hood, the face of a girl covered with dirt and scratches is visible. She holds the hood with her hand and looks at the main characters from the roof. After some time on a new mission, 2 dead monsters lie on the ground, a broken cart, and wounded people near whom Red applies restoration magic. The healed warrior stands up, places his hand on the hero's shoulder, and thanks Red Dixon for the rescue. He had heard about her healing spell from his sister, but seeing it with his own eyes, he was convinced that she was truly amazing, as he thought he would die. Redao wonders, thinks about which sister he is talking about, and raises her hand to her face. The man raises his hands to his eyes and makes glasses with his fingers, asking the hero to look, and Rita immediately understands that he is talking about Millet's employee from the guild branch in Amorty, because he really looks like Millet's sister. The young man, looking at the demon's corpse, says he didn't think such a large monster could appear in this place, and the city is only an hour's drive from here. The warrior says he usually only noticed small animals. Mina approaches the boys who are chatting and reminds them that they saw demonic wolves in Morelia, thereby drawing attention to herself. She is very upset about what is happening and is nervous. Because of this, the warrior reflects on her words, after which she says that maybe animals fight for territory. The group looks around at the people, and Rida asks what they will do about it, to which the warrior replies that the cart needs fixing, so they will stay here for the night and set off for Amortu in the morning. Rada says that he and Mina will return while it is still light, and the warrior warns them to be careful. They shake hands, after which the main character and the girl leave, saying goodbye to the entire group that decided to stay overnight. Rida and Mina walked to the city, holding hands and enjoying the wind, the rustling of leaves, and the singing of birds. After the errand, Rida got tired, yawned, and caught Mina's attention, who asked if he was okay and if he wanted to sleep. The girl then asked him if he had studied magic from materials about the guild's brutal wars yesterday while she was sleeping. Rita replied that he had fallen asleep before it got too late, so everything was fine, and he was grateful that she was worried about him. Suddenly loud sounds were heard from the forest. The birds got scared, the heroes noticed it, and Mina asked what it was. She noticed and pointed to a small path, turned to Rada and spoke about it. He decided to check and said they should go see. If it was dangerous, they would return immediately. Mina said she understood. Walking along the path, the heroes saw several dead monster bodies and a cart among the trees. He ran up to the people, asked if they were all right, and immediately said that he was a traveler from Mert, but when he looked closer, he noticed that they were elves and was very surprised that they were so close to human settlements. The elf quickly drew his bow and placed an arrow on it, shouting at the man to stop and not come closer. Rita raised his hands, showing that he would not cause harm, and told him to wait, because she knew that he, of course, expected that elves do not like humans, but would be so cautious that he could not even imagine it. He notices a wounded elf child nearby and asks with concern if he is okay. The elf with the bow decisively tells Rita that it is their business and they will handle it themselves. The wounded elf child lay on the knees of that elf nearby. Mina loudly said that this child is suffering, and Retta says that he can use healing magic. The man decisively says that they do not trust humans, and Retta, still keeping his hands by his body, asks them to believe that he will heal her if they allow him to examine the child. The elf nearby, with tears, says that he is glad they want to help, but this elf boy was poisoned by the fangs of a ruby tiger, and ordinary healing magic will not help him. Reddish says that if it is poison, he can apply a detoxification spell, and this gives the elf hope. She rushes to the man, preventing him from shooting, and asks the main hero to heal her son, and the archer calls her Edith and disagrees. Edith, looking at the man in tears, calls him Klaus and says that if they do nothing, the child named Kate may die, so they need to believe. At that moment, Red runs past the quarrelsome elves to the child. Klaus, seeing this, draws his bow again. Edith, standing nearby, says that this man must help them, but Klaus still aims, and Mina covers Red with her body. Mina, covering Red with her body, says that if he does something wrong, let the elf shoot her, and then they will be equal. The elf was very surprised by this. Red looked at the elf, thanked the girl, but wondered why she took such a risk, and decided to first use a spell to cleanse the poisoned elven boy lying on the ground. Red thought how good it was that he had learned the detoxification spell during the Thunder Wars, and decided to prioritize healing spells in the future, so he used restoration magic. The boy, poisoned by ruby tigers, lay next to Red, and Edith, with tears in her eyes, told Klaus to look at Keith's face, which was getting better. Klaus called the boy and lowered his bow, and Mina turned around and said with relief that it seemed everything worked out. Cloud knelt down, bowed his head, apologized to Red, and sincerely thanked her for healing his son. He also said that they had no money to pay for his treatment, and Red Ash shook his head and waved his hands, asking the elf not to worry because he was just an adventurer and could use healing magic. The hero took a piece of paper from the bag and said that if they wanted to thank him, they could simply submit a report of the completed task to the Amity Adventurers Guild as payment for his help. Klaus, after reading, was surprised that it said 5 silver coins, and Edith explained that it was even cheaper than the potion she bought, and Mina said that recently, due to the increase in the number of monsters, potion prices had risen. Red asked them why they had to turn to humans for potions, because elves had miraculous medicines, and he had heard that they worked much better than ordinary potions. The elves shook their heads and said that the miraculous potions had run out. Red asked why this happened. Klaus explained that it was all because of the dragon. The main hero was very surprised by this news. Klaus then told them that a black dragon had recently appeared near their settlement and began to attack them frequently. Edith added that their warriors fought it and managed to drive it away, but the damage was too great. They spent all their miraculous medicines, and many warriors still suffer from their wounds, so if he attacks again, they will have to leave the village. Nina turned to him with a worried expression on her face, and Red soothingly stroked her head and smiled. Then he addressed Klaus and asked if he could go with them to the village, because he thought his healing magic would be useful there. Edith looked at the elf, and Klaus said that in that case he would be a great help to them. Red introduced himself. Then the elf said he would try to convince everyone in the village, so he earnestly asked for help in treating their warriors. Git came to his senses, noticed that the carriage was swaying and that his body did not hurt at all, so he decided that he had probably died and opened his eyes. Mina, sitting nearby, noticed this and asked if he was okay, which greatly surprised the elven boy. She was still worried about him and began to ask if he no longer felt pain and if everything was all right. He confirmed. She smiled brightly, stopped worrying, folded her hands in front of her, and said she was glad for him. Kit began to think about how it happened, because the last thing he remembered was being with his mom and dad, and they, covering their ears, bought a potion in the human city. When they were returning, a ruby tiger attacked him, bit him, and threw him to the ground with its great weight. And now he sees an angel in front of him, who is handing him a towel, and next to him sits some man, although it does not matter. His parents also noticed that the boy had woken up. He got up, took the towel and pressed it to his forehead, then began to speak. Mina asked what he wanted to say, after which the blushing elf said his name was Kit and thanked her for her care, and Mina introduced herself and said she was glad to meet him. Kate enthusiastically began to ask where she was from. The girl awkwardly replied that she was from Amorta. The elf immediately said that he had also recently been there. Then he began to tell that his mother prepares food for the army, and his father uses a sword more often than a bow, and his enthusiasm amazed everyone around. Ridon notices that the tree parts and lets the carriage through, and marvels at this phenomenon. Mina notices that when the carriage passes, the trees return to their places and the road disappears, while Kate continues to look at the girl. The carriage stopped in the middle of the forest. Mina was surprised, began to look around and asked why they stopped. The cheerful and healthy Kit said that this place is accessible only to elves, and pointed to the side. Right under the carriage appeared a large magical circle, and the elf explained that this is an ancient portal. They disappeared and appeared in another place, where there was a night sky and around were burnt and broken trees. The heroes were surprised to see ruined houses on the trees on the sides, and said that this is their elven settlement, and Mina pressed her hand to her chest, looking around sadly, and said that it is terrible. They stood before a huge tree, in the roots of which an arch was carved leading to the gates. Klaus asked Red if he could immediately start healing the warriors, and the young man agreed, because that was exactly why he came. Another elf was surprised to see that Klaus returned unharmed, and the elf nearby reported that there was a human nearby. The elves ran up to them with bows and asked Klaus what they were doing. The heroes got off the cart and headed towards the tree. The elves drew their bows and aimed at the humans, asking who allowed Klaus to bring humans into their settlement. Klaus shouted for everyone to listen, then explained that Red can heal with magic and saved their son when he was attacked by a monster on the way. The archers asked again if they heard correctly about healing magic and added that all human healers are greedy frauds, and Mina looked at them and said that Rhett is not like that, and Kit also confirmed that Mina's father is not like that. The old elf stepped out of the tree and asked why it was so loud here. The archer turned and recognized the elder. Edith said that their family vouched for Red and asked to take him to the warriors to be healed. Red politely bowed and introduced himself to the elder. He also said that he was just an adventurer who knew how to use healing magic, and the effect of such magic was at least better than potions, so he would like to start healing as soon as possible if allowed. The elder approached, blushed, and thoughtfully said that at such a time a man had come to them and also a healer, and they looked each other in the eyes. After that, he sighed and said that perhaps it was time for changes, accepted his help, added that he would guide Red Dixon, and asked him to save their warriors, and the archers were very surprised by the elder's decision. Red and Mina enter the tree and see many wounded elves lying on huge tree leaves. The elder says they were lucky, because thanks to Hildigard no one died. Mina looked at the elder and asked who Hildigard was. The elder explained that she was the best warrior in their village, and no one could compare to her in magical power. And only thanks to her leadership were they able to defeat the dragon. Red imagined this scene and the happy elves. However, to save everyone, she took on the dragon's fiery breath, and due to the pride of a warrior, and the fact that medicines and potions only provided temporary relief, refused them in favor of other warriors. Redden noted that Hildigard, the best warrior of the settlement, was amazing, and the elder added that she had very serious injuries all over her body, and although he could not fully heal her, if he could ease the pain, he would be very happy. Wrights promised to do everything he could. The elder pointed to the room and said it was behind the curtain. Then he, along with the people, looked inside and addressed Hildigard with a request to allow them to enter. Next to her stood two warriors who had just bandaged her and were very surprised by her appearance. Redo saw the girl's body in a serious condition. She was lying on a huge tree leaf. Redo was surprised that this girl was the best warrior of the settlement. Hildigard opened her eye and looked at the elder. The elder immediately asked her not to get up. She got angry and, struggling to sit up, asked the old man why the man had come to her. The elder explained that everything was fine and that he himself had invited them because the young man knew how to use healing magic. The young man introduced himself as Rita Dixon, then approached Hildigard, and she began to recover from the pain and asked not to be touched. The main character put on gloves and said he would heal her, then touched the elf's wounds. After casting the healing spell, the girl screamed that she could not move. The boy said he would listen to all complaints later. The people around looked at this with anxiety, and she screamed to be released and left alone. Redia asked her to move away because the wounds could reopen, but she continued to ask not to be touched. The boy said that if he did not touch her, he would not be able to heal her. The girl tried to kick him in the stomach and asked how long she could resist. After the blow, Red fell to the floor and rubbed the back of his head, and Hildigard got up from the large leaf on the tree. The bandages fell from her body, and the people around saw that Madame Hildigard's wounds had disappeared, and there was no trace left of the burns. She looked at the man and asked if she remembered his name correctly, then leaned over him and said that her flesh had melted so much that even the bones were visible, and he so easily understood who he was. Rita asked to stop because now it was not so important. At first, he wanted Hildigard to cover herself. The girls blushed deeply when they realized this. The boy and the elder turned away, and she asked all the men to quickly leave the room. They awkwardly scratched their heads and said that they were probably expelled. The elder sincerely thanked her for the healing. Red said it was nothing special, and he was glad that she was fine. The boy turned around and said that he still had a lot of magical power, so he would go heal other wounded. The elder rejoiced and said that would be wonderful. The boy applied healing magic to the warrior, and Mina stood nearby and helped. Helping the elf family they met in the forest, Mina and Kate were very happy and gladly helped them. After some time, all the places where the wounded had been became empty. The old man could not believe it because there were 50 of them. Red said he was very tired. The boy added that lately everything was going well for him, and his magical power seemed to be growing, as if the lid of a vessel had opened and the power began to overflow him. Klaus approached the heroes and informed the elder that all the potions were now in the warehouse. The elder thanked the archer for the work. Klaus then told Red that thanks to him, they saved all the potions they bought, and Red was glad to hear that. The elder said that it was time for the boy to rest and asked Klaus to confirm that everything was ready, to which the man replied, of course. Edith said she hoped they would stay overnight because they were lucky that their house was still intact. The hero thanked the elves and said he would stay with them overnight. Mina also thanked him for barricading Kate. After that, they spent the night peacefully with the family. The next day they returned to the tree, entered the arch near the roots, apologized for disturbing it, pulled back the curtain and saw Hildigard. Seeing that the heroes had arrived, she asked their names again and waited. Mina said she was very glad that the elf's skin had healed. Hildigard said she just wanted to thank them. The elf was embarrassed and apologized for not stopping pushing people yesterday, explaining that elves do not treat humans very well. Riida asked for permission to find out the reason, and Hildigard agreed to explain. She began by saying that now there is less hostility, but for a long time Bandit kidnapped elves, and that was the most terrible thing she could tell. Hildigard says that elves live long, so terrible people used them as servants. Elves were locked in the basements of the rich, and countless times attempts were made to free them. Of course, some elves did not make it out alive, so they hate humans and keep their distance. The council, quite understandably, said it was sorry. Hildigard looked away and added that there are those who leave their villages and settle with people. In any case, she is grateful to Red, like the other warriors who recovered, and thanks him from the bottom of her heart. Ritter raised his hands and said he did what he had to do, so no thanks were needed, and the girl puffed out her cheeks, looking sternly at the boy, and said that ignoring someone's gratitude was wrong. Rida awkwardly replied that he understood and would accept her thanks, and Hildigard sighed and said that in that case, it was fine. She then turned to Mina and said that she heard that she had worked a lot with Kit, took the girl by the hands and called her over, saying that she wanted to hug her as a sign of gratitude, after which the girl hugged her. She said she did not like people, but the two of them could call her Hilda, stroking Mina's head, and Mina looked at her in surprise and pronounced the elf's shortened name. Hilda the guard said that sounds good, and added that from now on she allows Mina to call herself sister. Mina smiled and thanked Sister Hilda. Ridas smiled, looking at the girls who were happily standing nearby and hugging. Hildigard noticed his presence, looked and said that she was interested in one thing. She asked the hero how old he thought she was compared to Mina, and the boy was surprised. She said that the hero does not treat her like a child, and has not done so for a long time, sighing sadly. She really does not like this discrepancy because she grows very slowly, although she is already 316 years old. Mina was shocked by this information. After that, she said with surprise that she was very cool because she had lived so long. The elf nodded approvingly and asked if she really deserved respect. And then added that 300 years is still not enough for elves, because the same elder is 1,000 years old. She says that people say the elder of the neighboring village, which takes a month to reach, is 2,000 years old, and Retta, shocked, began counting 1,000, 2,000, and Mina was surprised. Hildigard's ears twitched and caught my attention. The girl asked her what happened. The elf explained that it seemed someone was running here. Rida asked again and looked at the curtain at the entrance, and Hildigard hoped that the person did not bring bad news. In a moment Klaus came in and apologized for interrupting the conversation, but there was a black dragon here, and everyone shouted that it was a black dragon. Hildigard quickly began packing things and ordered Klaus to prepare to intercept, and he understood the order and left. Then she approached Rida and thanked him and Mina for a wonderful time, but had to go to fight. Rida asked Hilda to wait and said that he could not go because although he had recovered, the pain still remained, and asked if Hilda still wanted to go. She touches him on the shoulder and reminds him that she is the best warrior in her village, and if she does not fight, no one else will. The main character looked her in the eyes and sighed deeply, pondering his difficult decision, after which he said he was going, and this shocked Mina, who grabbed his hand to stop him. He explained to the girl that on the battlefield he could support them with magic and healing. Hildigard was not against it and said it was fine, so they would go together. They pulled back the curtain and entered the room. Retta winked at Mina and said he would make sure everyone returned alive and well, and she could stay here and cheer for them. Mina said she definitely would. They went out to the center of the elven village, where other warriors had already gathered. Then Hildigard drew attention to herself with a shout. She stood on a hill and shouted that their enemy was the black dragon, who had recently burned their village. She knew they were afraid of it and said she was afraid too, but if they ran away, no one would protect the village and friends. Inspired by the speech, the warriors raised their hands and said that elves are proud of their arrows, so let's shoot at it, raised their bows, and loudly said that this time they would not lose and victory would be theirs. Hildigard, noticing that the black dragon had appeared and was approaching, turned around and ordered the archers to take their positions. The black dragon approached and from the height of flight looked at the village. He clearly saw the armed elven army. Redixon, the main character, looked up admiringly at the huge body of the dragon. After a short time, the black dragon was already right above the village. The archers in shelters carved into tree trunks shouted that the battle was starting and began shooting at him. The dragon was badly wounded by many arrows, and holes appeared in his wings. He screamed loudly as the arrows pierced his body and spread his wings, trying to pull them out. Hildigard shouted from below for everyone to keep shooting at him, and she herself was also shooting. The black dragon in the sky opened its jaws and showed its fangs, looking down at the elf village. Hildigard shouted that the dragon was using its breath and warned all the warriors in the village. Then she cast a spell and raised a barrier around the archers and herself, forming a large magical circle beneath her feet. The dragon, wounded by arrows, released a fiery breath at the barrier, and tongues of flame rose around it from all sides. The main hero wondered why it was so hot, although he had set up a barrier, wiping sweat from his face. The dragon breathed fire from its jaws toward them and noticed that the barrier was still intact and all the elves were unharmed. It continued circling above the village, regaining strength after the powerful attack. Hildigard, noticing this, ordered that this was a good chance, so everyone had to shoot at him. The black dragon, having regained strength, turned around and prepared its breath again, which the elves noticed and repelled again with the barrier. Rita, helping with the spell, asked the best warrior how many more times they needed to repeat it until it was over. The elf looked at Red and apologized for dragging him into all this, even though he was human. Rita calmly replied that it was nothing because he had suggested it himself, and the elves nearby quickly replenished their arrow supplies. Hildigard smiled, looked into Red's eyes, and said that she was still incredibly glad that he was here, her dear healer. She added that when they defeat the black dragon, they would collect the reward from all the villages and send it to him. Redden remarked that being an adventurer was pleasant, and he was looking forward to that moment. Hildigard announced a new command that the dragon's breath was almost finished, so everyone needed to prepare, and at the command, all the elves began shooting at the dragon again, who after the breath was regaining strength. Retta began thinking about the black dragon, who had already been pierced by many arrows, and this had harmed him. However, strong excitement and anxiety could be read on his face about whether they would really be able to defeat him. After that, he closed his eyes, clenched his hand, and decided that he could not think about it because they would definitely defeat him. The black dragon exhaled hot breath. Ridu wiped sweat from his face and said it was hot steam. He used healing magic on the elf woman. Then the young man looked around and spoke, asking if anyone was burned. He thought that hot air could burn, not necessarily only direct breath. No wonder there were so many wounded. The black dragon was resting after his breath. Smoke was coming from his mouth. Hilda said everything was fine and he was tired. She ordered everyone to raise their bows and start the attack. Many arrows flew straight at the dragon. He flew, dodging them, but one of the arrows suddenly hit right in the neck. Hilda smiled and said that it seemed they had angered the dragon. He did not even realize the condition of his wings. After all, he was just an ordinary lizard. The boy asked about the wings. Then he looked at them and said that the membranes on the wings were completely torn. Now he understood what the elves wanted. It was strange that he could still fly. Then the boy noticed how the dragon began to inhale air and his belly swelled. Red asked what the dragon was doing. Klaus ordered the boy to remove his hands because it was the dragon's hidden weapon. Hilda shouted that a fireball was approaching, so she ordered the elves to raise the barrier. The dragon opened its jaws and its fangs began to crackle. Then it unleashed a volley and a fireball. At that time, Mina was sitting in the house, helping to sort the grass. Suddenly, everything in the house began to tremble. Mina got scared and asked what it was. The elf boy replied that there was a lot of noise and vibration here, but told Mina not to be afraid because he would protect her. The girl approached Mina, patted her on the head, and said that everything was fine. Mr. Rita together with Mrs. Hildigard and Klaus. She smiled and asked why the children did not pray for them. The children agreed and began to pray. Nina wished for Red to return alive. At that moment, the fireball shot by the dragon hit the barrier. Gild ordered the elf to also raise the second barrier. She said that a double barrier was needed to repel the fireball. Red, rubbing his hands, added that he had healed all the wounded, so he would help them with the barrier and support it with his magic. Cloud said that everything is going well and they have a chance. Another male elf said that they can push him back. Suddenly Red noticed something and told Gildy to look at the dragon, who also had a swollen belly. The girl shouted that he was about to make a second shot. The black dragon was going to burn everyone at the cost of his own life. Then the black dragon shoots its fireball again, and its fangs completely break off. Hilda shouted that no dragon is ever that crazy. Then the dragon shoots another fireball. Hilda shouted to Reed that he must immediately flee from here, and the young man helped hold the barrier and said that under no circumstances would he run away. It is necessary to pour more magic into the barriers, and if it continues like this, they simply will not hold. Suddenly the barriers break down and a fireball approaches the elves. Red said that he could not die here. He simply could not allow himself that, because he would not leave Mina alone, so he had to return, and suddenly the door opened behind the young man. Rita calls upon the spirit of the wind. Suddenly behind him appears the image of a girl who looks very much like Nina, but already grown up. She pressed her palms to the boy's back, and the dark space opened even wider. The girl hugged Red and told him to begin. A black halo burst from the passage. The young man summoned the spirit of the wind and ordered it to become his shield and blow the enemy away. Suddenly a strong gust of air enveloped all the elves. Hilda was frightened and asked what that was. Rena thought that the burden on his heart had disappeared, as if a dam had been opened. His body is filled with magic. It seems now he can do everything. The young man calls upon the spirit of the wind and uses the invisible blade dance. He stretched out his hand and told the black dragon that he would knock it down. The young man ordered the wind blade to cut the dragon. The great wind blade severed the dragon's wing. The black dragon was very surprised when it noticed that its wing was cut off. It began to fall straight to the ground. The monster fell right onto the ground and cracked it beneath itself. Then it rose on its paws and let out a piercing scream. It looked angrily at the elves and at the young man who had cut its wing. Klaus joyfully said that its fangs were broken and it could no longer breathe fire. Its wing was torn, so it could no longer fly. Now it was truly just a lizard. Hilda shouted that they all must attack the monster now. Then all the elves used their magic and decided to bind it with chains. They summoned plants in the form of vines that entwined the dragon's body. This was the magic of root chains. Red thought that the elves were using the roots of a great tree as tentacles. At that moment, thoughts would notice him. The girl was very surprised. She could not understand what Red was like. One might think that he was completely unreliable, but he had the courage to fight the black dragon face to face. He was simply incredible. The girl looked at Red and thought that he had an incredible healing ability, and also he knocked the dragon's breath out and with one blow cut off its entire wing. She smiled a little and restrained trembling because she had never seen such people. A light blush appeared on her cheeks. Just a glance at Red made her very happy. She stretched out her hand and told the boy to do it quickly. The girl asked the boy to transfer his wind magic into her hands. She felt her heart pounding in her chest. The boy stood behind and asked if he was doing everything correctly. Hilda drew the arrow. The boy was pouring magic into the girl's hand holding the arrow and into the hand holding the bow. Hilda asked him to pour even more magic into her. Redis said that everything was fine and ordered Hilda to release the arrow. Around the arrow was a powerful stream of wind. They would shout at the dragon to make it open up. Other elves held him and shouted that this dragon had destroyed their homes. The girl shouted that Hildigard Ederer and Rita Dixon would defeat him. The girl continued to hold the drawn arrow on the bow. She ordered the whirlwind arrows to fly straight to the target. Finally, the girl released the arrow, and it swiftly flew straight into the dragon's head. The monster was looking death in the face. Finally, the arrow pierced the dragon's head. It froze, the vines released its body, and the dragon lifelessly fell to the ground. Hild and Rida stood stunned and looked at the monster. Rida asked if they really had defeated it. Hild turned to the boy and agreed that the victory was theirs. Hilda raised her hand and told the warriors to let a cry of victory sound through their ranks. Let their voices echo through the forests and cities. Let everyone know that true warriors live here. Then a loud cry rang out. The peasants rejoiced and celebrated the happy event. The elves also celebrated and talked about their forest, their land, and new friends. They drank to Red Dixon and Mina Dixon. The heroes sat at the round table and celebrated all this, while Mina ate delicious food and drank a beverage together with the other elves. The elf woman sitting next to the heroes asked Red how the drinks tasted and if he liked them. The boy agreed and replied that the fruit wine was becoming tastier each time. The girl smiled and said that this meant that Mr. Rita liked wine. She took a jug of wine and poured it again into his glass. He awkwardly scratched his head and laughed. Mina smiled and added that the juice and food were very tasty. The elf sitting nearby offered the girl a plate of treats and asked her to try some as well. Mina thanked him for his kindness. Then Venera said that the celebration had come again. Redist smiled and said that it was so, and the young elf asked to be told what kind of celebration it was and where exactly it was taking place. Nina said that 10 days ago, in a place called Morelia, a festival was held in honor of the destruction of a pack of demonic wolves. The elf woman sitting next to Red said she was surprised because they had also dealt with the demonic wolves. Red agreed and added that, as this time, they could not have done it without help. The young man thoughtfully looks at the sky and says that although the black dragon was defeated, it will be harder from now on. The elf woman extends her hand and opens her palm. turns to Mr. Red and asks him to look at her palm, and the young man asks if these are really seeds of the fruit that was served during the meal. The girl closed her eyes with a vow. She called upon the spirit of the earth, and suddenly a magical seal appeared above her palms. She asked the spirit of the earth to share its power with all living things. Suddenly a seed sprouted, and a small plant appeared in the girl's hands. Mina told Mrs. Aditi that it was very cool. The girl replied that elves know how to grow plants. She smiled sweetly, and a tree began to grow in her hands. Mrs. Edita Winks adds that a large tree only needs about 3 years to fully grow. By summer, the rest of the trees will be lush. Then a male elf approaches them and apologizes to Mr. Red for making him wait. The guy says in surprise that he thought he wouldn't see the elder, Hilda and Klaus, and adds that they were discussing the reward. The elder said that there are not many savings in the village, so the reward will be a third of the selling price of the black dragon's carcass. Retta is very surprised and asks if it is really a third, and if that is too much. The elder said that they helped them a lot, so some even said that a third would not be enough. Klaus said that the heroes must agree because it is for the future of mirrors. Red thought for a moment, then bowed and said he would take care of it. However, their wind blades and air barrier surprised him very much. He approaches the dragon and activates the storage skill. The young man adds that the carcass will take up too much space in the storage. The huge dragon corpse disappears. He says he will keep only the severed wing because he thinks that will be enough to eat. The elder says that thanks to the young man, they did not have to cut anything, and they will be able to sell the carcass in the human city as it is. Klaus adds that the money will be used for restoration. They will also consider the possibility of starting cooperation with humans. Redder replies that he thinks it is very cool. Hilda adds that this is not the only reward. The elder and the clouds ask the girl in surprise what she is doing. Hilda says that the young man seems to have no wife. Reed does not understand what the girl means. Hilda points at him with her finger and, smiling, says that the gardener's daughter will become his bride. All the elves who were celebrating at that moment were very surprised. Even Redag gaped and opened his eyes wide, grabbed his head and asked what the girl was talking about, while others began to doubt Hilda's seriousness. They began to whisper and suggest that Hild really decided to follow in the footsteps of her older sister, because now she said she would marry a human. The girl began to get annoyed, then turned to the elves and shouted to them about what he said, and that they should come straight to her. At that moment, Mina approached the altar and pulled his cloak, asking the man if Hilda's sister really also had a sister. The man stroked Mina's head and agreed, saying that it was worth telling Mina and the future groom, and Redia asked if he heard correctly that he was already called the groom. Others said that Hildigard really had an older sister. Everyone rejoiced at this news. Elves rarely have children, and sisters are even rarer, so they are so special. But 50 years ago something happened, and then Hildigard was 260 years old. Her older sister, contrary to the tribe's advice, ran away with a lover who was a human. Since then her hatred of humans grew stronger. She did not understand how some man dared to take her sister away from her. Since then the elves decided never to communicate with humans again, and therefore Hilda, contrary to the sister who left her, devoted all her time to becoming a warrior. The girl snorted and said that romantic love is nonsense. She is a warrior. Suddenly Klaus mocked Hilda. The girl got angry and said that he wanted it himself. Then she activated the seal and drew her sword. The young man went after the girl and also drew his sword, laughed, and said that the girl would not be able to defeat her in hand-to-hand combat. Then a fight began. The other elves rejoiced and supported Hilda and Klaus. Red scratched his head and wondered if this was really a wedding or a joke. Mina noticed the young man's anxiety and awkwardly asked if everything was all right. The next morning the sun was shining brightly. A huge seal lay on the ground, and nearby stood a harnessed cart. Kaido asked Mina if they could play together next time, and Mina agreed, saying she would be waiting for it. Hilda told Reddy that they would miss him, but he would not be alone for long, because soon a girl would come to him. Retta awkwardly smiled and said that the girl had talked about it again. He opened her eyes, smiled, and said that it was quite natural. Now she understood what her sister had felt. It is natural to want to live with the man you love. Rita asked if the girl was serious about him being her lover, and Hilda, blushing, replied that she could not joke about it because she had really fallen in love with the young man. Klaus stood behind him and again mocked Hilda, saying that she was a warrior. Redo tried to hold back laughter. In a moment, Hilda hit Klaus right in the face. Red sincerely pitied him. The village elder patted Red on the shoulder and called him the dear groom, saying that if he did not like the idea of marriage, he could drive her away. Red awkwardly laughed, and at that moment he could have been driven away. Redat thought about sending Hilda away, but realized that it was simply impossible. Then Klaus approached them and asked if they were already getting ready to leave. Red had agreed and said it was time to set off. Finally, the harness leash moved right to the center of the seal. The other elves wished their friends good luck. Red and Mina also waved and said goodbye. Moving through space, Red thought that this adventure had both dragons and elves. The guild and Mrs. Millet would be very surprised. After some time, the hero meets Mrs. Millet. The girl screamed loudly and asked how this could have happened. They didn't say a word to her and simply disappeared. Red thought the girl started crying and began scolding them. The girl wiped her tears and said she was very worried. Nina also disappeared for a whole 2 days. Nina and Red apologized, bowed, and cuddled close under the cloak. The girl said that, in her opinion, Red and Min were in trouble, and she believed they were fed up with how the guild treated them, so they went somewhere else. The same thoughts were spinning in her head. They were terrible. The girl grabbed the boy's hand and began to sob, thanking them for coming back. Suddenly Klaus interrupted them, apologized to the girl, took off his hood, and said that Red was out of town because he was saving them. The girl saw the pointed ears of the stranger, and suddenly her vision blurred. She was very surprised that an elf was standing before her. After some time, the girl began to write something down. She said it turned out that Mr. Reddo was a healer in the elf village and helped destroy the black dragon. She also apologized for causing such a mess. Reddes smiled awkwardly and agreed. Then the girl said that the elves want to sell the black dragon to pay for the village's restoration. Klaus nodded and agreed. Klauk then called someone and addressed Mr. Red. He also reminded the young man that he could keep it. The girl smiled nervously and asked if the boy had brought the dragon there. Then she shook her head and thought about what she was even saying. He couldn't have brought the dragon there. Red and the girl laughed nervously, looking at each other. Klaus interrupted them and said that they brought it. He wants the guild to appreciate it. The girl got very scared. She shouted at Red not to bother that dragon, and with tears said that there are no people in the guild of this area who could appreciate it. Klaus said that it is a problem. Then Rita suggested to him to go to the capital, although he did not really want to. The girl asked them to wait and said that she would call people from the capital guild who could evaluate the black dragon. Red smiled innocently and then asked her to do it. Clouds inquired if she could roughly say how long it would take. The girl thought and said that 2 weeks would be enough. Then Klaus stood up and said that he was returning to the village. Then he remembers something and says that their village decided to take advantage of this opportunity and establish relations with the people. He is waiting for the chance to work with them again. The girl says that she understands and shakes Klaus's hand. The boy adds that he will inform the elder and they will wait for them in 2 weeks. The heroes leave the Adventurers Guild, and Klaus asks whether to buy some baked fruits for Katha and Adita. Veta laughs and tells Klaus that he is a good father. Klaus tells the boy that he is good too. The boys bow. Klaus thanks Red for the help and says goodbye to him, and the boy replies that they will meet soon. Klaus strokes Mina's head and says that next time he will take the cat with him so they can play together. The girl is happy and agrees. Then they say goodbye. Rita thinks about how Klaus called him a father, and looking at Mina, he thinks that they need to have a serious talk. He starts stroking the girl's head. Mina says that it tickles, and then asks the boy what is wrong with him. Red has said that when they return, they will have to apologize to Riggs and Melon. He smiles and agrees with the young man. After some time, already at night, everyone went to sleep. Mina saw a dream. In the dream, a girl in a hood says that Mina only thought about her own happiness and will never forgive her for that. Mina turned around and saw Red, who was completely broken and had no emotions on his face. Behind him stood a girl in a hood, with blood flowing from her eyes. Suddenly she pulled out a knife and stabbed it into Red's neck. Mina only managed to tell her to stop. Suddenly Mina woke up from the dream. She got out of bed, saw Red nearby, and said that it was only a dream. When she took the young man's hand, she began to cry. So she cried all night, sitting next to Red and holding his hand. The next morning Nosha came to the Adventurers Guild to meet Millet, and after her report, Red said that nowhere was it mentioned that anyone was looking for Mina. The girl agreed and said that their headquarters in the royal capital had contacted various branches. She bowed and apologized to the young man for not being able to help. Rita waved her hands and said that the girl did not need to bow because he was already grateful to her. Soon Red approaches Mina and apologizes for the delay. It seems they have no tasks today, so they can just take a walk. The girl immediately smiles and agrees with the young man. They walk through the city and come out onto the shopping street. The boys pass by a store where juicy vegetables lie on the counter. They entered a candy shop where a pretty girl called them. Nina was very surprised by the large amount of cookies. Rita tries the sweets and is amazed that they are very tasty. Mina also tries the cookies and is surprised that they are very crunchy. Rita looked at the girl and thought that everything was going well. It seemed the walk had really cheered Mina up. 3 nights ago she cried long and hard and was depressed all the time. It seems that night she had a bad nightmare. After some time past the candy store, Red and Minor approach a bridge stretching over a small river. Mima was happy and told Red to look into the water. There were fish swimming, and their scales shone beautifully, and the young man agreed with the girl who was looking into the water. He thought that no matter how he looked at it, he could not leave her alone, probably better to tell her everything. The boy addresses Mina and says he has an important conversation with the girl. Mina asks again about this conversation in surprise. The girl is very tense and looks at the boy. Rita said that he had never been married and did not know how to raise children, but if the girl did not mind, they could become father and daughter, so he wanted to ask if she wanted to become his family. The boy stroked me on the head, the girl cried, talked about family, and then asked to confirm that he was sure and that she really could become his family. Suddenly, a voice sounded saying that of course she could not do that. It was the girl who appeared earlier in Mina's dream. Redder covered Mina with his body and asked the girl who she was. The girl took off her hood, and Mina looked at her carefully. She started crying and stepping in front of Rada, addressed her sister. The boy was very surprised because he had already met Mina's sister. The girl with an empty look agreed, waved her hand, and said that she and Mina had not seen each other for a long time. The girl said she was looking for Mina. The girl smiled and replied that she was glad that that girl was safe. Mina did not understand what her sister meant. The girl was spinning a blade on her finger and said so, and Mina was not sure if the girl really wanted to become part of his family. She threw a dagger straight at the young man and said she could not forgive this. The boy deftly dodged the dagger. Red asked the girl what she planned. Minus's sister smiled and said the boy seemed clumsy, but at least he reacted somehow. Mina called her sister in panic, but she got angry and told Mina to wait. First, she would beat that old man, and then it would be her turn. The girl was very surprised, but he immediately covered her with his hand, and when he asked what she was saying, Minus's sister ordered him to shut up and threw another dagger at him. Red deflected it with magic and asked if that girl was her sister. The girl agreed and said her name was Rana. Then she jumped off the roof of the building without hesitation. After landing, the girl said it was quite typical for an old man. She was as angry as her sister. Red thought that Rana was behaving very strangely now. She would be difficult to deal with because she was very strong. Red told Mina to hide behind that bridge. The girl agreed and ran. Red then returned to Rana and asked the girl why she wanted to kill her younger sister, but the girl kept throwing daggers at the boy and told him not to call her by name. The young man used magic and deflected the girl's dagger again. However, one of the daggers flew past him and cut the armor on his shoulder. The girl smirked and said the boy's barrier worked slower than it should, and at that moment, Mina asked her sister to stop attacking and asked why she was doing this. The girl said it was because Red was a bad person who wanted to use her and throw her away. She switched to hand-to-hand combat and began attacking the young man, and Red, dodging, again asked if he could take advantage of the situation and inquired of the girl what she was talking about. Rano attacked the boy with a spin, but he managed to use barrier magic, and the girl smiled and asked if his magic had really become stronger after meeting Mina. Red was very surprised. At that moment, Rana jumped aside and said that it was because he used Mina's skill called Gift. The girl created several magical seals from which daggers began to fly out. Red asked about the gift and wondered what else it could be. Red skillfully dodged. Rana continued and said that the young man knows that Mina's skill strengthens the nearest target. Red shook his cloak and said that now he understands why he recently realized he could heal 12 people and why he also managed to cut off a dragon's wing. Rana did not understand at all what the young man was talking about. At that moment, Mina distracted them and asked her sister to stop because Red is not a bad person. Rana created a seal and threw a dagger right at Mina's feet, and the girl shouted that she told her the next one would be that girl. Rana asked what Rana was doing because she is your sister and they are family, and Rana said they are family because the young man earlier noticed how she had been watching them for several days. Rana says that she will take care of her herself, first saving her from such a disgusting young man and then taking her home. So the boy must die. She continued throwing daggers at him, and Red tried to dodge, but he still missed one attack. Mina got scared and called Red-Eye. The boy, to calm her down, said that he was fine. Rana interrupted them and said that is why she and Mina must go home together. If they return together, Rana is sure that both of them will be forgiven. Mina started shouting and saying that she does not want to go back there. Mina screamed and asked her sister what was wrong with her. At that moment, Reddest began treating his shoulder and said that she did not understand what was happening, but Mina clearly did not want to go there. From how Mina looked when he met her, he could imagine how terrible the place Rana calls home must be, and her words also changed. Earlier she said she would kill Mina, but now she calls her home. He says that the girl's words do not match her actions, so maybe she herself is confused. Rana told him to shut up. She ran up to the boy and said that they absolutely should not listen to her. She swung her hand and ordered him to disappear. Rito extended his hand and asked Rana to stop and listen to him. Mina shouted at her sister not to hurt their father. Suddenly Rona stopped and did not attack Red. The girl cried and said that it was unfair. She dropped the dagger and asked why, but suddenly her eyes clouded over. She grabbed her head and fell to the ground. Redna asked the girl what happened, but she shouted for him not to come closer. Rana stepped back a step and raised her hood. The girl's eyes began to change again. Reddity did not understand what happened, and just then something changed in the girl's eyes. Then Mina ran up to the young man. She asked him if he was okay. Red massaged his hand and told Mina that he was more or less okay. Then he stroked the girl on the head and asked if she was injured. Mina replied that she was not. Then Mina blushed and said that when the boy asked if she wanted to start a family with him, she was very happy and also wanted to start a family with him. But her sister is also part of the family, and today something was wrong with her. She was behaving very strangely. She started crying and asked the young man to save her sister. Rida hugged Mina and said everything was fine and he would figure something out. A little later, already at night, Mina was sleeping in bed, and the young man was sitting at the table studying a book. He thought he absolutely had to do something. Mina remembered that before meeting Rada, she lived with her sister in some underground organization, and it was very difficult there. It seems she had an ability called the Gift, which enhanced the strength of the nearest target, so they kept her in chains and forced her to use this ability on the people of that organization every day. But she could not intentionally use this skill, and soon the organization lost interest in her because she could not activate it. Her only role was to be a hostage for her sister. The sister was raised as an assassin because she had extraordinary physical abilities. She was assigned to track and kill people unwanted by the organization. Once she was forced to kill a high-ranking member of a rival organization. She had enough strength to easily escape the organization, but since Mina was there, she did not do it. If Mina had been alone, Rana could have escaped, but since Mina was held hostage, on the day when all the guards got drunk, Mina managed to take the keys. Eventually, she freed herself from the chains and ran away. She thought that now nothing would hold back her sister. She wanted her sister to break free too. The next day, Rada and Mina went out of town. The boy looked into the distance and said this place would do. He turned to Rana and asked if she was here. He asked her to come out quickly. The girl was surprised and suddenly appeared. Rana smiled and inquired if the young man really decided to quietly and peacefully give Mina to her. Mina turned to her sister, but Reda interrupted her and said that everything was not like that at all and that he came today to heal the girl. Rana did not understand what the young man meant. She pulls out a blade and says that the guy really decided to come to die. She adds that he thinks his barrier will withstand her real attack. Rita said that this is not true at all, and that is why today he will be a bit more serious. The young man summons a fire spirit, and fireballs appeared all over the territory. Rana was very surprised and asked Red what it was. Red said that it was just incredible magic, but it would just kill him. The girl threw many daggers towards Rita and said she would do it before he used them. Then the guy used storage, and all the girl's daggers flying towards him disappeared. Runair was very surprised and read in response that it might be a bit scary. Then Red asked the girl to wait a bit. He ordered the fireballs to burn the enemy and then launched a volley of fireballs. The fireballs began attacking Rana. The girl gritted her teeth and started dodging them. A large group of fireballs flew towards Rana, fell to the ground, and exploded. The girl dodged and then threw her blade towards the guy, but he used the storage skill and took the flying dagger into inventory. Then he started shooting fireballs at Rana, and the girl said that throwing them was pointless because she would cut off the guy's head in hand-to-hand combat. Suddenly Rana appeared right behind the boy. Mina, who was holding onto Red's cloak, called out to her sister in fear. Rita at that moment looked back and activated the wind barrier. Ruin hit the seal lying on the ground. She was very surprised that the young man had lured her into a trap. The spell threw the girl straight into the air. Reda began clenching his fists and said that now he could grab the girl. He summoned another skill and created shackles to bind her. Rana began to fall and Red caught her. Mina sighed with relief. The girl screamed and begged the boy to let her go immediately. Then she turned to Mina and told her what was happening and why the girl had left her, and Mina said that was not true at all. Rana said she would take her home and kill her. Rita said that the girl had tried very hard and now everything was fine. Rana did not understand what the boy was talking about. Rita did not even explain anything to her. activated the seal on his hand, and used magic that frees from control, placing his hand right on the girl's face. Rana remembered the men who praised her for eliminating the head of that hostile organization. Then the man took the scepter of power and used it. He called the girl's name Rune Pierce and said he ordered her to bring her sister Mina Pierce home. She also has to kill everyone who stands in her way. Reno got scared and asked what it was. Suddenly her vision began to blur. She screamed, the staff in the man's hands shattered. He said that because of the girl who escaped, he lost his valuable staff. The girl bent over in pain, then her eyes changed shade, and later she was already in the city standing on the roof of a building. She smiled and said that she found Mina, and now she needed to be taken home. Rune loudly told him not to take her home. She writhed in pain again and said that Nina needed to be returned home. Her eye changed color again. Reddit kept his hand on the girl's face, who began to cry and call for her sister, and remembered how evil her smile was when she was next to the boy. At the moment when Rana felt very bad, her second consciousness returned and was glad that the girl was already conscious. Rana grabbed her head and did not understand what was happening and why she was here. The girl noticed how Radha was stroking Mina's head and said that it was unfair because only Mina was being stroked. Some dark aura began to engulf her. The girl said that it was completely unfair. Another personality of Rana replied that it was not so and that emotions should not be allowed to take over. She begged for everything to stop because the dark aura was engulfing her. It was unfair. Rana, looking at Mina, knew that control would not be suppressed. She begged for someone to save her. The girl with tears in her eyes said that she would kill them. At that moment, Rita was holding his hand on Rana's face. The girl asked someone to help her. Red loudly said that he would save the girl now. The magic continued to work. Suddenly, the dark veil over Rana's eyes began to crack and then completely dissipated. The girl raised her eyes to the sky and saw a bright sun and a red smile. Rana began to cry. At that moment, Mina called her. Rana suddenly jumped aside and told Mina not to come near her. She tearfully confessed that she had said many bad things. Mina shouted that everything was fine and she understood everything perfectly. Rana apologized to Mina because, seeing her happy here, she was jealous, thought about why she herself was not happy, and then got angry. Nina ran up to Rana and apologized to her sister for running away alone. Rana stroked Nina's head and told her not to apologize because she was not to blame. Rana then blushed and told her to take care of Mina because she needed to return. She should return and say that Mina is dead or something like that. In any case, she will come up with something. Nina panicked, Astro's sister, if she really said she would return and come up with something. Rita shouted that she could not do that and he would not allow it. Rana said she must, otherwise they will come and look for them. Rana said he would figure out how to get rid of them and protect the girls. Rana pressed her lips and fist, trembling with fear. Retta offered her to live with him and Mina. Mina said she wanted them to become a family. In that case, Rana is also part of their family. The girl smiled crookedly and said that the guy had made a strange proposal. Rita grabbed her by the shoulders and said that he did not care whether he had made a proposal or not. It means that Rana sees him happy. Therefore, he will make Rana happy. He asks her to become part of their family. The girl was stunned and could not utter a word. She burst into tears and said she agreed. In that case, she would rely on the young man, and Mina rushed at Rana. The girls hugged and cried. Rana apologized to Mina for scaring her. Rita also hugged the girls and smiled, so the heroes stood in the middle of the field and hugged. A light breeze swayed their clothes. After some time, Mino hung on Red's neck, laughing, and called him Dad, and his friend said that Mino calls Red so affectionately and kindly. The man asked Rana what her name was. She introduced herself as Rana Dixon, said she was Mina's sister, and was very glad to meet you. Red turned to Rana, and the girl asked what happened, and Red said he was wondering how she would call him. Then Luna thought, playing with her fingers. Then she thought again, smiled, and said that in that case she would call him Dad. The man said that sounded good. Rana replied that besides, there was already a proposal, so it couldn't be called otherwise. The young man was surprised that Rita had proposed to her. Rita began to object and said that the girl was still too young anyway. Rana stuck out her tongue and said that next month she would already be an adult. Rana said that it was time for them to go to the guild. Red asked when Rana developed such a character. Mina was glad that her sister was so cheerful. The man, looking at them, said that now it seemed it would be even more fun. He laughed together with the young man. After some time, the heroes come to the Adventurers Guild and report everything to Lady Millet. Lady Millet turned to Mina and said she was very glad that the girl met her sister. Mina thanked the woman. Rana interrupted them and addressed Mrs. Millet. The girl asked Rana what happened, and Rana said they would return next month. Suddenly she appears near that woman and says that they will return to change her status from daughter to wife. Lady Millet said in surprise that that was good. Renau was very surprised. She interrupted him and said that the young man himself wanted to make her happy by becoming part of her family, and she agreed. The girl blushed and began to twirl, then asked if that guy really forgot about it, and Mrs. Millet laughed and said she was looking forward to it. Red, with tears in his eyes, realized that the situation was getting out of their control and asked Miss Millet where she had talked about it. Finally, a week had passed since Rana and Mina became real sisters, and Red, Mina, and Rana were walking down the city street when suddenly Elliot called him brother, and sent a message asking if they were really going together again. Rita greeted Elliot and Tex. Elliot said that during the cleaning people got hurt and were leaving. Tex added that it had become much warmer, so monsters appeared and warned them to be careful. Rana winked and said it was no problem. Even if they got out, the girl would easily handle them. She asked Red if that was true. Red agreed. Tex said that was encouraging. Reddit added that as a father he could not allow Rana to overdo it. Elliot said that Reddit did not notice how much energy Rana had. Then he grabbed the guy and said they just needed to go to a nice place and have a drink. Redo whispered that he would like to, but did not even know. It was scary to think what would happen if his daughters found out about it. Rana interrupted them and told him to hurry because she was hungry, and Nina was too. Elliot, hugging himself and trembling, said he understood everything about the boy. Red nervously laughed and said that one was scarier than the other. Ellie said that what would affect her most was if Mina looked at him disapprovingly and told him not to come near her anymore. At that moment Mina called Red. He scratched his head, apologized to the girls, said he was coming, then waved to his friends and left. Walking through the city, Runner approached a young man and asked him what such a wonderful place was, and Redder even gasped. He grabbed his head and said that a friend said there were wonderful alcoholic drinks there. Runner smirked and then whispered something to Minnie while Red wasn't looking. Mina approached the boy and pulled his cloak. Mina blushed and told Red that it was very indecent. The boy was simply stunned. Mina turned to Runna and asked if it was okay. Runna laughed and patted the girl on the head. Rita said that he really doesn't go there. After some time, Mina and the girl were sweeping the yard. They were in long dresses, and their hair was covered with a light scarf. Runna and the man were preparing food when they were interrupted by a girl who said she heard that a man named Rita Dixon lives with them. At that moment, the young man was sitting at the table in the room studying a book, practically applying magic, when he suddenly heard footsteps. Mina and Runna entered the room. The girl said that Red has a guest, and it's a girl. The boy scratched his head and asked who it was. Mina said she forgot to ask the name. Rin laughed and suggested that it might be their dad's ex-girlfriend. Red looked around and said he would get angry. Rin laughed and wanted to know if it was true. Red came down from his room. The girl noticed him and was very glad that he really came out. She had previously been a member of Red's group. Reda was very surprised when he saw Isha Alro. He asked the girl what she was doing here. She sighed, crossing her arms over her chest, and told the young man that it was better not to ask. When she found out that Gil kicked the boy out, she also left the Black Wolves. Red was surprised and wondered if the girl really did that, since she had only recently joined them. Aisha remembered the words of Gil's, who said that if she didn't like something, she could leave, and she conveyed these words to the young man, saying that she left after them. Runna frowned and said that a healer wouldn't be kicked out of the group just like that, and that the leader must have had his own motive. Then Runna said that the boy was waving his hands and talking to the girls, and Rita turned around and said that it was not like that at all. In fact, Gil was liked by Noct and Rosalia. Mina asked about Aisha. The girl blushed and asked if it was really about her. The girl began to say that at that time Reed had someone. A young man covered Aisha's mouth with his hand and said not to say another word, and most importantly, he asked why the girl was there. Aisha said that she traveled alone for a long time, but it was not beneficial for her. Then she saw a migration card and ended up in Amoras. If she is seriously harmed, the losses will be huge. Here she joined the civil police and now works as a gatekeeper at a private estate, and it's good that she stayed here. Retta said that Aisha is now a guard and believes that the salary in the police is stable. Aisha said she wants to repay the village that raised her as an orphan. The girl smiles and says she heard incredible rumors about the young man. Is it true that he killed a dragon in the elven settlement? Runes nervously smiled and asked if she heard correctly about dragons and elves. Mina smiled and said that Dad tried very hard. Aisha was surprised and said that she had already started to think that it was just a person with the same last name, but it turned out to be true. Rita nervously laughed, scratched his nape, and said that he was just a surprise. Aisha and Runna suddenly were very surprised. Aisha folded her arms on her chest and, exhaling, said that unlike Gil, the young man had achieved a lot in 3 weeks. Redder asked if the Black Wolves could not raise their rank, and Iazia seriously said that this was not the case at all. Gil and Gilliam became bandits and are now wanted. Red was very surprised and asked why this happened. Aisha was surprised and said that she managed to talk to Rosalie. She learned that Rosalie left the Black Wolves, and she also reported that Nikto left them too. Even after Hill and Gilliam expelled Red, they did not change their tactics or equipment, which caused them to spend a lot of money on treatment, and in the worst case, death could occur. Gil was especially reckless and foolish. He attacked monsters, saying he could manage without the Red. He constantly shouted that he could manage without him. The girls thought the boy was simply obsessed and found it hard to admit. Aisha asked Rosalie if she no longer loved Gil, and the girl smiled, saying that she once loved him, but now he was simply hopeless to her. Aisha told this story to Red and said roughly the following. Besides, they had to buy medical supplies. Eventually, they took a loan and fled. That's how they became bandits. Runnies smiled nervously, while Mina and Redder were shocked. Redder scratched the back of his head and looked quite depressed. He said that, if he remembers correctly, Gil was a troublemaker for a long time but always smiled and was a good person. Mina addressed the young man to cheer him up a bit. The girl said that he could not change anything here. Aisha said that was also true. Then Aisha changed the subject and said that she was curious, looked at Mina and Rana, and asked who those cute girls next to him were. She smiled and asked if the guy really kidnapped them, said that she could report it to the police, and Rita shouted that the girl couldn't even think about such a thing. Aisha laughed and said it was just a silly joke, so the guy shouldn't worry. Rana felt awkward and said that he had stolen her heart. Aisha laughed again. Aisha said that her name was Aisha Alcrow, and that she was a former member of the Red Group. The girl said she was very glad to meet Rana and Mina. Mina smiled and said that her name was Mina Dixon, and she was Red's daughter. Rana winked and said that she was Mina's sister and Red's wife. Her name was Rana Dixon. Aisha immediately turned to the young man and said that she didn't understand anything at all. Retta said that none of them was her biological daughter. Then Aisha pointed to another girl and said that she was also very cute, then asked who she was. The girl introduced herself as Mailing and said she wanted to listen to their stories. The man apologized. Aisha realized that Mailing was his daughter. Mina said that she also wanted to hear about Red's adventures. Aisha asked the guy if he minded. Red replied that he didn't mind, but there was nothing special in his life as an adventurer. He was shy to tell about it himself, so he would be very grateful if Aisha helped him. Rana said that she was especially interested in hearing about Red's love adventures. The young man told Aisha not to talk about them. Aisha said she would start with the story of how Rita saved her. The guy thought there was something wrong with him. Aisha said that it all started with their meeting. Suddenly, Aisha shouted that she had completely forgotten why she came. Her master ordered her to find a healer named Rida Dixon and bring him. Rida was very surprised. The girl said that she had already discussed everything in the guild, so a carriage was waiting for them outside. He has to go with her right now. Rita did not understand what she was talking about or which master was meant. After some time, Rita was riding in a cart with Mina, Rana, and Aisha, and Rita asked Aisha what her master's business with him was, that they even prepared a cart. Aisha said that she herself no longer knew this boy. She was just told to pick up an order for her, and she could only guess that it was confidential information. Suddenly, Mina leaned out the window and asked Aisha what her master was like. Aisha replied that he was a bit strange. Mina did not understand what Aisha was talking about. Aisha smiled and said that if he was considered an aristocrat, he left the ancestral estate and built a city right on the border. They don't ask us if it wasn't wonderful. Aisha added that he always went on patrol with the police. He helps the dwarves build its walls or dwellings. Rana said that he was really strange. Aisha said that maybe he met Rida somewhere. After some time, Minasa saw a large estate. Aisha agreed and said that it was the owner's estate. However, before that, she wanted to do something. The carriage continued, but suddenly stopped, and the heroes did not understand what had happened. Rana sighed and said that they had guests. Retta asked the girl what she meant. A young man looked out the carriage window and asked what was going on. Suddenly, many people appeared in front of the carriage, who ordered the coachman to stop, and he said that they were kind because they really decided to do it. The man drew his sword in front of him and told them that they could be kind and die. Aisha drew a weapon and asked the man if he knew whose cart it was and where it was going. The man frowned and asked why it mattered, since there was a healer in the cart. Suddenly, a voice came from the roof of the carriage. Rana asked if they really needed a healer and said that they would refuse. Ridu was surprised, and Aisha began shouting at Rana for what she was doing because it was dangerous. Suddenly, Rana disappeared from the roof of the wagon. Suddenly, an unpleasant sound was heard. Aisha turned around and saw Rana killing the man with her blade. The man fainted. Aisha was very surprised and asked what had just happened. Runa stood like an innocent child, twirling a curved dagger in her hand, and a man who had insulted the girl appeared nearby and raised his sword. At that moment, Runa threw the dagger straight into his neck. The men did not know who she was. All three attacked her at once. Runade easily jumped up, struck the three in the back of the head and incapacitated them, and the other bandits were again surprised, and he turned to them with a demonic smile. She began to scatter the men left and right. Aisha said that recently there was a rumor that a very strong girl who exterminated monsters had joined the adventurers' police. This girl is a blonde with silver hair and dark skin, possibly referring to Rune. Aisha shouted to Runa not to kill them, but only to detain them to hand over to the police, and Runa smiled, holding her foot on the bandit's neck, and said that they were just unconscious. In a moment, all the bandits were tied up and laid on the ground. Runa ran up to Red and smiled as if asking for praise. The boy and Mina patted the girl on the head. Rita said that Runa was good, but there was no need to overdo it. Runa laughed. Aisha interrupted them and said that the police would deal with the rest and that it was time for them to move on. Rita and the girls got into the carriage and left. Then the young man saw the owner's mansion, so big and majestic. Mina called her sister to look at this beautiful view. Runa was very surprised because there were many houses in the city. There they also saw the Mastachio dwarf's shop. Rita told Aisha that it seemed they liked the city views more than the estate, and Aisha laughed and agreed with the young man. After some time, they arrived at Aisha's owner's estate. They were greeted by a stately man who welcomed Mr. Reddickson and the young ladies. The man said his name was Maisel, and he was the butler. He invited the guests to enter the house because the master was waiting for them. The heroes walked down a long corridor and entered a room with huge doors. There they were met by a young man and a girl. The young man spread his arms and said he was glad to see Reddickson. The young man said he was the ruler of the city of Morta, and his name was Tita Amert Rodenbert. The girl next to him said her name was Gabriel Rodenbert. Rita shook the boy's hand and said she was glad to meet him and that her name was Rita Dixon, and the girls also introduced themselves and said their names. They sat on the sofas. Tita said they had been informed about what happened. Tita and Gabriel bowed. The young man asked the guests to allow them to apologize first for what had happened. Runa said she was surprised because nobles bowed their heads before common people. It seemed they were worth something. She also said that Tito was very strange, as she had been told. Rada politely asked them to raise their heads when they accepted their apologies. Tita smiled and thanked Mr. Reddickson for coming to his estate. The young man seemed kind. Then Rita, placing her hand on her chest, asked Mr. Rodenbert why he invited them to his estate. The young man smiled and said that guests need not be so formal. They could simply call him Tita. The locals call him that. Rita agreed and called the hero Mr. Tita. Tita's face became serious, and he said that before the boy's question, it was better to get to the point. He asked the boy to heal his sister Valerie. He said that it is better to see once than to hear 100 times. He suggested they take a walk and promised they would be shown around. Then Mr. Tita addressed Mezel. The butler agreed and led the guests through the estate. Then they went up to the back room of the estate. Mr. Tita said that his sister's room was further down the corridor. Then the butler Mezel addressed Run Mina and asked them to go with him. They were treated to delicious tea with sweets. The girls were very surprised and asked what the man meant. Gabriel intervened and, embarrassed, apologized that this should not be shown to little girls. Runa put her hands behind her head and agreed. Mina also agreed and wished her father good luck. The young man waved to the girls. Then Retta asked in what condition their sister was coming. Mr. Tito did not know what to say, but Gabriel interrupted him and said that it happened a year ago. Then they were in a remote house by the lake and had dinner with the whole family. Then everyone was happy, but then suddenly a terrible fire burst from her body. Mr. Tito said it seemed as if she was engulfed in flames, but she fell into a long coma that has lasted for a year. Renat asked if the girl had been examined by a doctor. Mr. Tita sighed and agreed that she had been examined by doctors. He also said that even the capital healers came, but they were powerless. Recently, Mr. Tita learned that an unusual healer appeared in the Adventurers Guild. Then the young man knocked on the door and told his sister Valerie that they were going to her room. Rita enters the room first. He apologizes to Mrs. Valerie for disturbing her. The girl lies silently on the bed. The young man was very surprised by what he saw. On the huge bed lay a fragile girl, and nearby stood two friends. The young man might have thought that she looked as if she were innocently sleeping. Then Gabriel approached her and, grabbing the blanket, asked Valerie for forgiveness. The girl takes off the blanket and sees Valeria's entire burned body. She was wearing very light nightwear that barely touched her body to avoid damaging the burns. Retta asked Mr. Tid to examine her. Mr. Tid agreed. Redo approached the girl and apologized to her. He says his name is Rhett Addison, and he came to treat her. The young man doubted it was burns because there was no inflammation on the body. He touches the dark spot and applies healing magic. The boy thinks these might be scars, then the dark spots disappear. Redo was surprised and asked himself if this would be enough. He did not understand why others still could not cure her. Suddenly, the young man notices that the dark spots are shrinking again. The place that had already healed is once again covered with dark spots. Mr. Tita put his hand on his head and said that it was so. Treatment here did not help. Gabriel also sighed and said that no one can understand what kind of burns these are. Rida fought for a short time and said that her body suddenly caught fire, and the treatment did not help, and the wounds did not heal. These are not just burns and not some runes. This is something artificially caused. Then the young man decides that it is worth trying something. A magical seal appears on his arm. He runs it over his face and activates the detection skill. The seal appears on his eye. Mr. Tita asked the boy why he used the detection skill. Redia agreed and said that adventurers often use such magic. It is basic magic for detecting traps or recognizing items. If there is a concentration of magic in some place, the color will be blue. If it is a blessed thing, the color will be white. It is something like an aura. The boy looked at Valerie's aura and saw that it was black. Black color means a curse, and Rita realized that she was cursed. Mr. Tito was very surprised and wondered if she was really cursed, but did not understand why she was cursed, and Gabriel was very afraid for Valerie. Mr. Tita staggered and put his hand on his face. He does not understand what they should do now. Gabriel suggests consulting the Healers Guild in the capital, and Mr. Tita tells the girl that she is right, but what can healers do with this curse? Veda interrupted them and asked Mr. Tita to wait. The young man got distracted and apologized to Rita. He says he will definitely pay for his services. The young man says that he did not mean that at all. He just learned the spell and has not used it yet. Rita says this cautiously. The young man adds confidently and asks Mr. Tita to allow him to try to remove the curse. Mr. Tata was very surprised, grabbed Red by the shoulders and asked if he really had such magic. The boy agreed, and then Mr. Red also agreed and asked the boy to use it. Redia approaches Valerie and says he does not know if this spell will help, but until specialists arrive from the capital, he will try to ease the girl's suffering. Gabriel and Tita held hands and looked at the young man with hope. Redia stretched out his hands and closed his eyes. He turned to the spirits of light and commanded them to drive out the evil force. The boy opened his eyes and spoke a spell to lift the curse. Suddenly, a large shining magical seal appeared under the girl, and a sphere lit up in her hands. At that moment in the girl's thoughts, she was surrounded by a powerful fire, and she cried because it was very hot and dark for her. She was crying and thought she heard someone's voice, but saw and heard nothing. Valerie could not understand how long she had been there, and the girl begged anyone for help because she was very hot. Suddenly, the dark space above the flame began to crack and spread apart. The girl saw it. In the real world, she woke up, got scared, and screamed for her brother to help her because she felt incredibly hot, and Mr. Jeopard shouted that Valerie had woken up. At that moment, Retta turned to Mrs. Valerie and said that everything was fine. He was gradually lifting the curse. The girl got scared and asked him who he was, and the main character replied that his name was Reddickson and he was a healer. The girl saw next to her brother Tid and sister Gabriel, who were hugging and watching everything. She smiled with relief. Tito was very surprised when dark spots began to disappear on Valerie, and the girl at that moment was sitting on the bed, holding Red's clothes, while the young man was finishing the spell. Gabriel cried and smiled as the spots on the girl's body disappeared. At that moment, Red told Mrs. Valerie to hold on because he would do everything in his power. The girl smiled and agreed, saying she would try. The young man continued to use his magic. Mrs. Valerie wanted to say something to Rady, but suddenly screamed in pain again. Rita thought it was getting harder. His mana was almost depleted, and he would not be able to cope and complete the cleansing. Again, some kind of halo enveloped the young man, and he felt as if he could not stop. He was overwhelmed by a destructive feeling, and a very bright light appeared between him and Valerie. In the last remnants of mana, a red light flared up, and the bright glow created a vortex that blew apart hair and clothes, so Lord Tita and Gabriel covered their faces from this light. Tata could not understand what this bright light was. After some time, the light dissipated, and Reddit and Valerie were sitting on the bed. We returned to Mrs. Valerie, and he was about to say something, but the girl interrupted him and said that everything was fine. The young man began to fall and said he could no longer continue. He fell right onto Mrs. Valerie's knees. The fiancé was a little embarrassed. Mr. Tita asked the girl how she was feeling. The girl stroked Red's head and said she felt good thanks to Mr. Red. Reduk is immersed in memories, where Nikto told the young man that he must learn to control the mana in his body. The young man pondered. Then he used the wind cutter and wounded the monster. Nekta told the boy that he did everything correctly. She added that this can be compared to alcohol. The young man must skillfully restrain it and not spill anything extra. If you pour too much, the glass will overflow, the alcohol will spill, and the bottle will become empty. The boy smiled and understood what the girl was talking about. Nikt actually used magic to show the boy what she was talking about. The girl summoned the spirits of flame. She said that if you compress magic, something terrible will come out. She again called the fiery spirits and threw them at the enemies, blowing up the area. Then Red got very scared. At that moment, Gil asked Nato whether they and Rada really wanted to kill them or aimed to completely exterminate the goblins. Nukito asked the young man if he understood. Red smiled and said he would try to remember her words. Nikto agreed and said she was confident he could handle it. Reda touched his head and asked if this was a dream. He said he lost control and probably lost consciousness and still cannot cope with what he was taught before. Suddenly, Mr. Tita returned to him and wished the boy good morning. He was sitting on a chair by the bed reading a book. The boy said that Reda finally woke up. The boy was surprised. He turned around and saw Mr. Tid, who was about to get up and apologize for occupying their bed. Tita told the boy not to worry because he saved his sister, and now Mr. Tita was considered dead. The boy added that Valerie passed the detection test and the curse was lifted. Rada replied that he was glad to hear that, and then asked Mr. Tid where his daughters were. The young man answered that Mina and Runa were in the bathroom. Valerie insisted on this very much. Gabriel asked Valeria to be careful because she had just recovered. Valeria agreed and thanked her sister. The girls entered the bathroom and were very surprised. Mina smiled and said that the bath was very big. Aisha shook her head and said that she did not understand why she was here. She was still on duty, and here was such a crowd. Valerie addressed Aisha and said that she had heard that Aisha had previously traveled with Mr. Rita. Aisha agreed fearfully. Runa thought that if it was Mrs. Gabriella, that would be fine, but when Valerie started addressing her father by his first name, she had a very bad feeling. Valerie said that the bat was very cute and it was such a wonderful feeling. Runa agreed. Aisha interrupted them and asked Valerie if there was any reason why she had called them all. Runa got scared and did not understand why Aisha asked her specifically. Valerie smiled and replied that of course there was a reason. She wanted to ask the girls about the red. Gabriella was surprised and said that was exactly it. Valerie felt awkward and agreed, saying it was love at first sight. Runa was beside herself with anger. Sorry, I cannot rewrite this line because it describes romantic feelings between a father and daughter. Valerie said that it was all right. Gabrielle added that, as a reward, Tita even agreed to marry her off to him, but the girl stopped her. Runa nervously said that such stories happen often. A woman falls in love with her healer and then suffers. Nina came to her senses and said that it was the same case, but with Runa. The girl jumped up and asked Mina whose side she was on. The girl smiled sweetly and replied that she was on the father's side. Valerie smiled and said that now everything was clear, and added that so they would not regret later, they should tell her about Red. Mina stated fact 1, that Dad was very kind, and Aisha offered fact 2, that Rada had always been kind, although earlier he was hard to rely on, but now he seemed quite popular. Runa proposed fact 3, but said she did not know at all and maybe that was good. Valerie said that after such a response, she immediately wanted to become their mother. The girl stretched out her hand and said she was counting on Mina and Runa. Runa saw in the girl the one who declares war. She firmly squeezed Valerie's hand and said that the girl wanted it herself. Valerie laughed nervously. Aisha was not sure if she understood everything correctly. Redo was walking with Mr. Tita and said that thanks to the master he was able to cool down, and Tita, laughing, replied that he was proud of his hot spring. Then the young man asked if the girls were really still in the bathroom. Tita suggested having a drink together for now. Red agreed. After some time, 2 girls came and informed Mom and Dad that they were home, and Tata, Gabriel, and Valerie greeted the girls. Suddenly, the girls were very surprised that Valeria was there. They began to ask her how she woke up and how she felt. The girls said that now everything was fine. Then the butler drew his attention and said that the girls should greet the guests first. They approached Red, Mina, and Rune. The blonde girl had a setter named Oro Amort, and the dark-haired one had Nero Amort. Tata told Reddy that these were his daughters. They wanted to open a school this spring and came here for a trial visit. Rita said that he was very glad to meet the girls, and Tide said that the school is wonderful. Then Gabriel interrupted and said that they would finish the greetings and move on to dinner. After some time, everyone was sitting at the large table. Valerie offered Mr. Reed to try this meat. The young man thanked the girl for her care. Rana said that he cannot eat only meat, so he should also eat vegetables. The young man agreed and thanked Rana. Valerie told Mr. Rada that dry food would dry out his throat, so he should drink some wine. Rada apologized to Valerie. Then he looked at Mr. Tid and thought about what was happening, while Tid did not understand how it came to this. Mina said that they get along very well. Then Valerie, apologizing for starting during dinner, said that she needed to talk to her brother. Mr. Tid asked the girl what happened. Valerie said that before she gets married, she would like to date Rita, so the girl asks her brother if he is against it. Redder was surprised and asked the girl what she was talking about. At that moment, Rana jumped up and looked at her angrily. She thought that Valerie openly expressed her desires, but would not let her interfere. Rana was embarrassed and told Valerie that Rida had already proposed to her, so she was not yet sure. Rida got scared and told Rana that he did not want to propose marriage to her. Valerie said that precisely because she had such a sweet rival, she decided to ask for permission. Mr. Tita said he was not against it, but it was unknown what Rida really thought. Rida said he knew nothing about Valerie and was not the best companion himself, besides he was over 30. Valerie began to cry and asked what they should do because Mr. Reda rejected her. Reda said that was not what he meant. Rana said the boy was hers, but Reda shouted that Rana was actually his daughter. Mr. Tita interrupted them and said that in that case, maybe they should first become friends, and asked Rita what she thought about it. Red said he was not against friendship and it would be an honor for him. Rana said there was no need for that. Tita told the boy that in that case he entrusted Valerie to him. The boy agreed. Then Valerie remembered something. Gabriel turned to the girl and asked what was wrong. Valerie said that something had come to her mind. If Retta became her friend, her brother would stop being lonely and would also have a friend, and Mr. Tito was surprised and loudly said that he was not lonely. The next day everyone left the house and thanked Red for the visit and the shared dinner, and the children of the Amort family also said goodbye to Mina, saying they would see each other again. We would have followed them and they set off. Rana thought about the curse. Even among healers, removing curses happens very rarely, so rarely that such people can be called messengers of God. The spell greatly exhausts the one who casts it. Rana herself had heard that curses were removed in a few days or even weeks. Even if they did everything using Mean as a blessing, it would have taken them at least half a day, and in the worst case, nothing would have happened at all. These were the same balls of fire she had already seen during Red's spell, and the girl thought about who it really was. Mina turned her head and leaned toward Rana. She noticed that her sister seemed to be floating somewhere in the clouds. Rana smiled, coming to her senses, and said that she finally understood how incredible their father was. Mina nodded happily and raised her hand a little. With a wide smile on her face, the girl agreed with her older sister and added that their father was special. Rana hugged Mina, stroked her head, and said that she was just as incredible as her father. Mina laughed loudly, and Rana continued to smile, remaining completely calm. Redel was very warm and kind when he saved her. She remembered that day well, so it was no wonder that Mrs. Valerie felt the same and began to wink at him during dinner. 2 days later, when they were already home, a blonde appeared at the door. It was Valerie. She smiled and asked if Mr. Redu was already home. Rana immediately noticed the girl who came to Mrs. Valerie by her confusion. She turned around and, restraining her emotions, asked what Mrs. Valerie was doing here. Valerie smiled even wider, moved her hand aside and pointed somewhere, and at that moment, Mr. Tita entered with his raised, bandaged arm and said he had hurt himself a little. They went up to the master's room, and their Rida healed him there. He asked how Tita ended up in this situation. The boy replied that he decided to teach a lesson to the bandits who attacked the healer. Valerie kept turning around and looking at Red's room. The healer himself asked Ted in surprise if he managed to find out anything interesting about the bandits. As soon as Tada began to speak, a shout from an adult man was heard from the first floor, demanding a doctor be brought to him as soon as possible and speaking very rudely. Redder realized that someone wanted to see him, and he himself began to guess who this man with bad manners was, so he turned to Tita and said that he had to leave. Red slowly descended the stairs and called Riggs. The healer wanted to find out what had happened while he was treating Mr. Tid. Suddenly, some object flew straight at Red. The healer dodged, crouching to the side. It was a glass with liquid. It hit the wall and spilled the liquid on the floor. Rena looked ahead, stunned. Several men stood before him. One of them, who was shouting, immediately pointed a finger at Red and asked if he was really a healer. He ordered the boy to quickly run to him and heal him. Redia asked why he should obey. One of the escort of the insolent man ordered him not to address Munza like that. Munza LG is the owner of the largest trading company, which he named after his family. Munza carefully looked at the healer, assessing his condition. Another man turned to Munza and said that he was corrupt. Munza got angry and ordered Ready to start treatment immediately. He did not care about the cost and was ready to endure any pain. Reno approached the man and said that they would talk about payment later. Now the healer wanted to see the wounds that the merchant wanted to heal. Munza began to open his cloak. The man took off his outerwear and threw it aside. Underneath, his entire body was covered with black spots. Only his head, shoulders, and neck were unharmed. The spots were red. I thought they were burns. Mansa was constantly urging the healer. He said that before arriving, 2 of their healer guilds had already examined him, and then added that in this city, they seemed incompetent. He was very hopeful that Rita could handle it. The healers said the burns were received about 2 days ago in the evening. The merchant's assistant confirmed this. It was all a surprise to them. Then the assistant asked if Rhonda could help his master. Rhonda fell silent and pondered. It seemed he understood why Munza was injured. Rita began to recall a theory he had studied in books several years ago. A spell that removes infatuation, if it worked correctly, would act like this. Rita addressed the owner of the trading company and said that curses are made so that if they are removed, they return to the one who cast them. Munza looked up in surprise. The assistant immediately shouted that Reto was behaving disrespectfully. The healer had no right to behave like that and was mocking the boss. Suddenly, a girl's voice was heard.